gamer, she never gonna stop. At GM level, he reigns supreme. Stim and win, it's like a dream.
And I'm going to start off at this current point. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about today, obviously our masterclass is about Terran, but the first matchup that we're going to be looking at once we get into the game is TVZ. Now, a lot of people will huff and puff. A lot of people will be very, very excited because TVZ, there's a lot of things that we can have a look at within the game itself. So we've got JMac versus Easy Mode TVZ in this game. So before we even go into the game, before we even look at the matchup itself, what we need to do is we need to have a look at Terran at a conceptual basis and understand what it means to be a Terran. So what I normally do is I precursor this and I say, once you've signed up to be a Terran, you've signed up to be a dick. Alright? And many people will laugh at that, especially if you play against Terran. Now, the reason why Terrans are dicks is because at the middle stages of the game, Terran are designed to be so annoying. So Terran, in the whole aspect of things, are very aggressive, are an aggressive race. So Terran have loads of tools of what they say that Protoss players and Zerg players have. They have a lot of tools to get things going and snowball the game. Liberators, Banshees, Hellions, Cyclones, all these units that have got quite a lot of mobility and are able to kill workers, units, are able to quickly snipe in and out and get out of there scot-free. Now, the problem is with Terran is players don't understand that Terran is so aggressive. Now, I would like to reference a couple of players now. This is just before I go into this TVZ, and I'll explain why aggression is important to TVZ itself. But the reason why Terran are aggressive, especially in a matchup in TVZ, is that Zerg players can only make workers or units. So the more aggressive a Terran is, the less units, or the less workers the Zerg players are likely to make, because they're spending so much time and energy and resources defending whatever you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go for a one base all in. That's not what I'm asking you to do. But I want the Zerg or the Protoss player that you're playing against as Terran to really feel like they're in a box and you've just kicked that box down your stairs. And it'll get quite claustrophobic if you do that. So Terran are the aggressive race. Zerg are the reactive race. So Zerg can be aggressive and defensive. And the reason why they have that luxury is because of these bad boys, these overlords. So they can look across the map with their first two overlords and make a decision of what their opener is going to be. Yeah, whether it's going to be a Bane bus or it's going to be a Roach Rush. They can do that from a hatch first opening. Yeah, really, really easy for them to decide that. And Protoss, up until this recent patch, is mainly defensive. Now, we'll go on to Protoss in another replay. But Protoss, the reason why they're defensive is because they have all units that are actually good when you're attacking into them. So Storm, Colossus, Sentries, you've got shield batteries, force fields. There's so many things that Protosses benefit from being defensive. Yeah. And the only way to do damage to Protoss is to actually try and commit and do something against them. So that's where they've got you in a chokehold sometimes. So the first thing we're going to have a look at today is TVZ. Understanding TVZ as a concept and understanding why aggression rules the roost. So in a lot of your games, and what I'll do is I will pop it on this player's screen at the moment. And all we're going to be doing is having a look at, from the Terran's perspective, exactly what we need to achieve in the game. So in TVZ, the main point of a Terran is to open up into a Reaper to try and get any information that we can. Now, there's some subtle information that a lot of intermediate players don't look for, which we'll have a look at in a moment. But we always open up into an 18 SEV scout. Now, the reason why it's 18 and not 17 and 18 and not 19 is for you Diamond and Mid-Master players, it allows you to almost expand on the high ground if there simply is no hatchery. For the expert players and above, we would generally scout from 19 or we don't scout at all. And there's a specific reason for that, because there's some certain builds that you can or you can't lose to. But that will come to that at a later stage in another masterclass. But for now, for you to be a good TVZ player, an 18 scout is quick enough that you can see what they're doing by the time your expansion is coming down. So that's the reason for an 18 SEV scout. This has been working for as long as I know, for probably about 10 years, this same SEV scout timing that's here. Very, very good. Yeah, so we've got SEV going into the natural, and all we're looking at is whether the hatchery is more than 3/4 of the way done. Yeah, so many players play on timings. That's great, but timings on the bottom left hand side of your screen doesn't help if your opponent is simply terrible. So you want to know whether A, your opponent is going for an expansion. Tick box, fantastic. B, is the spawning pool done? That's the only two things that you need to worry about at the moment while you're going for a Reaper. So we get our expansion down, seeing the expansion, and the spawning pool is not done. So that now means our Reaper can go across the map without there being a risk of any damage. If this spawning pool is done, then your opponent has gone for a very unorthodox opener. And I say unorthodox, but it's no longer unorthodox. It's the 15-15 or the 15-16 or the 15-18. They've got so many different versions of it that all the Zerg players argue amongst themselves, which is good for us as Terran and Protoss players. But if this spawning pool is done and your SCV is here, there is a risk that Zerglings can get behind your Reaper. Alternatively, if you get to your base and you get to their base and you scout that it is 1/3 of the way complete, there is missing minerals here, because what would usually be 275 minerals to make the hatchery, that is now missing. So it is assumed if it is below half health that they have gone for pull first, and that now means we either expand on the high ground if you're not confident, or we make a bunker in the natural very close to your expansion. Under no circumstances do we not take a measure. Yeah, we can't see a pull first and then go, yep, I can hold everything with a Reaper. You can do that if you're a rather good player, but it's always very, very good as a good practice to get that bunker in the natural, just in case the follow-up is then the most important part. So the follow-up from a pull first would be either checking whether they've got gas for ling speed, or checking whether they can go for those dirty roaches and ravagers, which a lot of people like to do. So already now we're at 1 minute 39, and there's so much information that we can gather. So at the moment now, we're going into the main base. We want to scout whether he's got the spawning pool. And you also want to know whether he's mining any gas. It's really, really important, because gasless builds get punished. Any unorthodox build that you come across as a Terran will get punished by 4 to 6 Hellions and a Liberator. Yeah, even a standard build order will get punished by that. There are a couple of things that we'll scout for that we'll have a look at anyway. But if there's gasless, then that means that ling speed is not finished at 3 minutes 30 to 3 minutes 50. That means so much for our Hellions. They get full control of the map and you feel like a mini king. So you must make sure, must make sure that they are mining from 1 gas at least. It's really, really important. It opens up the game for you a little bit more. Now, again, if you're not familiar to Terran, you go Reaper, Marine, then Factory, and then you're choosing whether to grab your second gas at that point, or you're not grabbing your second gas and you're going for a 3rd TC. So we'll get to that point at the moment, and I'll discuss to you why the decision that I make is the second gas. So we've got the Reaper going across the map, and now we're coming up to the reactor, so we'll pause as we get there. So at the moment, our base looks like this. So we've got a reactor, we've got the factory, we've got the expansion coming down, we've got a second gas. So a lot of players will go to you, oh, but Richie, you can get a 3rd TC basically for free. That's not entirely true, because to get a 3rd TC unhindered, yeah, without delaying your first 2 Hellions, is nigh on impossible unless you're practicing this build day in, day out. It's very, very difficult. So what I like to do in TVZs is I like to go for the second gas so that I can put a little bit more pressure in the early game, i.e. get my Liberator or my Banshee out quicker. The second gas also allows you to defend versus anything that you scout from the 3 minute timing, which is what we're gonna have a look at in a minute. But if you go straight for a 3rd TC, yes, if you hold an aggressive push, or certainly an all-in, which at the moment now we realise that there isn't going to be an all-in off of 1 or 1, maybe 1.5 base, but certainly not 1 base, we can be a little bit more cautious. Certainly if they go for a pull first, I do not expect players to go for a quick third CC. It's not required for you to be ahead in the game. You're already slightly ahead because of the fact that they gone pull first. It's up to them to drone up and get further ahead than you, rather than the onus is on you to get further ahead. So second gas, I always recommend for players that are getting up into GM, even at GM. And I mean, this guy I think is top 50 at the moment, and this guy I'm pretty sure you'll see what happens anyway. So we've got the Marine obviously scouting around, making sure that he can deny an Overlord scout. This isn't really that important. So now we're getting into the Reaper micro, or being annoying with the Reaper. This Reaper is not really designed to kill any workers. If you can kill a worker, that's great. The Reaper is designed to stay alive and to be annoying. We need to scout how many drones they've got in their natural. We need to see if we can start step the lings. Basically, when you're Terran, you're scouting through aggression. Yeah, you're not actually taking spare time to scout. And loads of Terrans don't understand this concept because you don't have time to have a look whilst not doing any damage, whilst not doing anything. Because aside from Protoss and Zerg, which can separate their mechanics and their macro cycles, Terran cannot. It's almost like a fluid relationship between making units and making workers. So what we need to be able to do, our most active times is when it's when our reactor's going to be producing and things like that. So you can see the camera of this player is literally just making sure that his Reaper is safe and slowly doing things behind it. And you can see the Reaper here is just waiting for any sort of, I don't know, you could, if you're a master player, you're trying to wait for the early creep tumor. It won't affect much of the game, but it certainly will tilt your opponent. But under no circumstances do that if your macro is slipping in terms of producing units. So now we're getting up to 3 minutes, and this is where players really don't have a routine. So players that get lost at this point in the game, they don't know whether it's safe to go for Hellion. So this is why we scout at 3 minutes to 3 minutes 20. And if you're a Terran player, please write that down. Because once your first 2 Hellions are starting, that now means you are committed to making those units. So we now need to make sure that is the right decision and we're not walking into 5 roaches coming across the map. So an easy way to tell that it is not an unorthodox build is at 3 minutes, your Reaper should jump straight into the main base. And it will happen soon, don't worry. So the Reaper is now scouting around. Third base is being scouted. Reaper's coming around. Is it going to be bang on 320? That's pretty cool, isn't it? Fantastic. 320 coming into the base now, and we're having a look. Now, the main thing that we're looking at for first is not a roach run. Is actually their ability to produce units that are better, which is their Vespene gas. So we need to know whether there's any workers mining on this gas at this time. Any. So if there's 3 workers still on this gas, you know that there's 100 gas missing somewhere. That's either a lair or a roach run. You almost don't even need to see the rest of the base. Obviously, unless players can make mistakes, and yeah, they can be bad, as what players will call it. But right now, the only thing the opponent is focusing on here is mineral production. The only thing they can produce is lings and queens, which now makes this a right decision based on your information. See how interesting that is. Now, if you're a Zerg player, you want to try and deny this scout by either having Zerglings here, patrolling here, maybe the Reaper gets caught, because they're not really going to get through this side, and your queens at the front. Yeah, that's the way that you prevent this scout from making the Terran make mistakes, basically. So if the Terran doesn't know whether this is gas, if you don't know whether it's gas, you kind of have to go into a Banshee. You don't go into a Liberator at this point, yeah? Because you're not sure whether there's going to be a lot of roaches coming across the map. So that's the importance of this scout right now, and a lot of people don't know that. After this scout has happened, you can be annoying, you can throw a grenade in there, doesn't matter. But now you know you've made the right decision and that there is only going to be link speed, again, between 3 minutes 30 and 3 minutes 50. Most likely it's going to be a little bit later because players are going for an earlier third bases. So with your first 2 Hellions and your Reaper, and this is for the intermediate players rather than basics up to probably low diamond, mid diamond, is you're using the first 2 Hellions and the Reaper to gain information on the third and to kill some creep tumors. That's really the only thing that you need to be doing here. So right now, what information can we gather at the third? There's drone counts. There's lava, unused lava. Those are basically the only two things here. Obviously, he's grabbing the gas to save the drone, and also queen count. You almost pull units into a direction. The reason why we don't go across the map with our first four Hellions at this stage when you're playing ladder is so that you can build up 4 Hellions at home. So if your units do go across the map and Ling speed has been completed, that means you don't suddenly get caught off guard by about 8 to 12 Zerglings going to a natural. This is a really easy way, should he not have creep, that he can't actually defend this base. Yeah, he has to now move these queens over to this side and then move the queens back over there as well. It's pretty cool, especially with maps like this with the third base that's quite far away. Now, once we understand this position here, and to be honest, he has got slightly less workers than I would have liked to be at this stage, but that only really goes to your detriment. Is all you need to be doing is applying aggression from this point on. So your 2 Hellions and your Reaper will come back at home and reunite with the rest of your units. And we'll see what that looks like. Because now we're going for the Liberator aggression at the same time. Or will we be moving across the map with the Hellions like a madman? Certainly will. Fantastic. And I don't think that's a wall there. Then that should be. So we've got 6 Hellions and a Reaper on one side. And the Liberator on the other side. Now, from a basic to an intermediate level, there's not a lot of micro that's needed here. The Liberator just goes straight to the main base, and basically what you're doing is you're making sure the circle is around the hatchery. Most likely they're going to put their spore crawlers here. In the natural, they're going to probably put their spore crawler here, or if they're lucky enough, they'll put it here. So again, a circle is just really good to just be putting on the hatchery itself. And certainly here, the spore crawler will be here or at the back here. Yeah, for Zerg players that are defending against Liberators, you don't want the Liberators to get behind your bases. So the most efficient way, if you've got a lot of queens, is putting a spore crawler here and a spore crawler here. That way he can't get behind your bases, and that's really, really important. Because technically the middle base should be protected by your queens. Yeah, and that's for intermediate players and above only. The good thing that my opponent is doing the 420 scout. I say the 420 scout is much later than that. So he's now identified whether it's bio or mech, which is fantastic. So now from this point on up to 5 minutes, he now knows whether he's going Hydraling Bane or Roach Ravager. Really, really good scouting time in here. And I assume that Overlord was just hidden at the back here and moving around the side behind the natural. Really, really good Overlord position here, because the Marine is normally stopping the other Overlord. So let's have a look at this aggression in TVZ at the moment. And let's have a look at how successful or how bad this goes, because it can be a double-edged sword. Meanwhile, whilst you're moving across the map with your Hellions and your Liberator, during this time, both of you are macroing or producing stuff very, very heavily. So you go 2 barracks, 2 engineering bays, 2 gases. That is at an intermediate level and above only. To discuss when the third base come down, because I didn't actually put that down here, your third base will come down just after your 5th and 6th Hellion, usually. Yeah? So you'll see an abundance of resources just when that comes down. So you'll see, look at that. Your 5th and 6th Hellion are just about to be complete. That's when we're a little bit comfortable in our position and we're slowly walling this off. So we'll fast forward to the point where we're going across the map. So remember, this is from a double gas opener. So it allows us to be aggressive slightly earlier as well, which can cause our opponent to make mistakes. So now, because of the fact that I didn't see Hellions or Zerglings here, or this player didn't see Zerglings or anything here, there is a chance to dive because they're not in position. This is called disrespecting your opponent, going straight in. Now we're not going to be focusing on the lings, the drones. We're going to be focusing on killing the lings. Yeah, that's what we should be doing, because the lings are going to allow us to escape if there's not many. Meanwhile, the shift-click Liberator that requires no control is in the main base. We have now successfully, as a Terran player, disrupted our opponent. Yeah, and he's going to be losing this Overlord as well. Is that the first? That's the first Overlord still. So right now in this game, at this current point in time, we are doing catastrophic damage to our opponent. Killing those lings has forced extra 20 lings being made. This Zerg should be doing nothing but droning. And you'll see why that's very, very important later on. You see how there's now hardly any threat because of these Hellions coming out? You just put two Hellions, two queens here and two queens here mainly, and you leave your Zerglings in the middle, just in case of a dive. But you see how now the game is completely shifted, and it will be completely shifting to the Terran's favour. And all you're doing is keeping the queens at bay whilst your Hellion is doing the damage. And look at that. We can get closer and closer as a Terran to getting further and further even in terms of workers. And that's a bad sign for Zerg. If you have a look at the bottom part of the screen, we've got 2100 to 1500. Even if they pull all their workers off, this is great damage done. Now, in addition, the reason why this is a better position for a Liberator than behind the mineral line here, whether or not they have a Spore Crawler or not, is because you're able to now kill some units that are coming out of the eggs as well. Now, yes, they will get refunded the money, but that still now means they're losing that unit that should be out at that time. So the Zerg player still then either makes more Zerglings or makes those drones. They have lost that lava. That's pretty good. That's a good feeling as a Terran player. You should honestly try it. So from the one Liberator harass and 6 Hellions, this player has done 6 worker kills. Now that may not be a lot of damage. That's 300 minerals just at this stage of the game that has been done.
Yes.
Oh, hello. How you doing? Just make sure you're muted as you come in.
Vanessa Ryan.
Oh.
Main Bravo team.
I don't know whether someone could mute him for me.
Themselves. Would you please show us who we're going after?
Have we got a mod that can mute perhaps? Sorry. Thank you.
I'm muted.
Thank you very much. And sorry for that. So right now, we're at a stage of the game where we're being very aggressive, and we're going into the next stage of the game. So by the time our opponent has dealt with all of this, our engineering bays are done and our barracks are done. That is the most important thing. That's why we start them earlier than the double gas. So just as a recap, 6 Hellions and 1 Liberator has caused all of this damage. From that damage, from that attack at the third, in terms of the human mind, the last place you were attacked is normally where you've left your units. You normally, as a Zerg player, sort of reset at that point. And you're thinking, am I droning? Am I getting gases? There's a lot of mistakes that the Zerg player is going to be making right now because their mind is everywhere. So once you've attacked the third with your Hellions, you want to then try and go into the natural if there's an opportunity. And that's for the intermediate players plus, of trying to get the extra bits of damage. Otherwise, these 4 Hellions are literally worth a whole CC. So just come back at home and use them as Hellbats for a push with 1-1. Yeah. Either way, this has been very successful because this has been very simple. And now you can see extra lings are being made. And that feels so good as a Terran player, because as we're starting tanks, as we're starting mines, I mean, it feels really good for us. Look at how many lings our opponent, or we forced from our opponent, and we're going into tanks or we're going into mines. It's completely your choice at this point. Yeah. Constantly producing Marines. The third base is done, and all we're going to be doing now is going on to that third base. You see how the natural is slightly oversaturated? It all works quite well. I'm not sure about that wall though. It kind of looks like Pirates of the Caribbean. But we've got the 1-1 on the way. The stim is done and the combat shields are done. The next stage after your 6 Hellion and your Liberator push is now the 2 medevacs. So whether you've got 16 Marines or not, you're going to move them across the map. And just for this purpose, I think this player will just go across the map with as many Marines as possible and just see if they can apply pressure. You see how they're not in the medevacs? And the reason why they're not in the medevacs is just to really prove a point here. There's a lot of Terrans that believe that they should be dropping the mineral lines or doing miscellaneous things with their time. That requires attention so that you don't accidentally run into a lot of queens. If you simply walk 16 Marines across the map with 2 medevacs, you get to start to kill creep, kill all any early Zerglings that are going to come to your army. Basically, your 16 Marine drop is there to shave a lot of the Zerglings. That's all the 16 Marine drop is there to do. Perhaps to kill some creep and maybe identify whether there's a 4th base. You can already see from the start of this game, Our upgrades are further ahead. We've got our 4th and 5th barracks completed, which we made just before we landed the 3rd base. And we've got double medevac production, and there's a lot of Marines ready to stim and win. So right now with the 16 Marines, this player is going to just absolutely terrorise the Zerg player. And all you're meant to be doing is shaving as many of these lings as possible. It doesn't matter whether you kill 5 or 10 lings or 20 lings. The Zerg player will need to replenish those units. Because at home, the production, if you have a look at the top left-hand side, should always be producing at least Marines and tanks. If they are not, you can be in a lot of trouble because you're meant to escalate this pressure, not de-escalate. So it's meant to be ramping up. So look, again, trying to snipe as many of these Zerglings as possible, getting into the medevacs, boosting them across. This is what the Zerg player did very well. Look at that Bane bust to the side. Just before the Terran player is able to wall off this 3rd base. Really, really good pressure. But, Zerg players, what you must understand is if you have killed workers on the 3rd base of a Terran, it's only going to get worse for you. Because those Banians could have probably benefited a lot better being as part of your army. So, this double drop is used just purely as entertainment value for you. Whilst you're now going across the map with most of your army. And again, all you're doing is shaving off lings with this 60 Marine drop, the very first one. Look how many lings we are able to at least try and snipe before we pick up into our medevac. Very, very good for the Terran player. Very good for us as a Terran player. See, 2-2 has not even started. 74 army supply to 52. And nothing's happened but a double Marine drop. It's pretty insane. This is why aggression rules in TVZ. Yeah. If the Zerg player doesn't go to 76 workers and he continually makes units, he's still on a low drone count compared to where he would be. Zerg players are inherently greedy. Yeah. You will get Zerg players that will stay on a low drone count. But even if they trade worse, they're still in a lot of trouble versus the Terran who is 3 base saturated. So Zerg players can do what they want in terms of harassing mineral lines. If they cannot deal with the army, which is the most important thing, they are in a lot of trouble. And because this Terran has harassed with 16 Marines, they're now really confident to push into the base. Look at the confidence here. We've got tanks behind the Marines getting ready to split, getting ready, and saying to the Zerg, you know in karate movies where someone takes a good fight and then the other one sort of ushers them on with the hand going, come on then buddy. That's kind of what you want to do with your Marines and your tanks. The Zerg player has to surround your army. And you're saying, come into my siege tanks, please. So as he does come into the siege tanks, the trade is just awful. And now you're in a better position. This is great. You can kill as many workers as you want as a Zerg player. But if you're in between bases here, and the reason why this base is that the Terran knows about this base is because that double drop that went into the main didn't see a 4th base here. So instantly, remember, you're using that vision and that aggression to scout what your opponent's doing. And already now, you're in between bases. Practically the game is over before the game has even started in most instances because the fundamentals simply aren't there for the Zerg player. And that's what's really, really important here. GG, well played. And there's a victory for the Terran player. So you already see there with TVZ, the amount of actions a Zerg player has to do to defend against the bullshit Terran can throw. It's better to be aggressive versus Zerg very early on and then force them to misinterpret or make a mistake in their gas count, or for all of these things. He's still ahead in terms of income. But because he cannot hold simple pushes because of the harassment that is before him, the drone count hits later and later. And that's where your 2 to 3 base push to the Terran is always recommended. You will always have a positive win rate versus Zerg if you're always very, very aggressive. Obviously, and then you've got to follow the stages of where you're scouting at 3 minutes and things like that. So just to recap, and TVZ in general, and if any of you guys have got any replays, certainly TVP or TVT, it'd be good to have a look at those as we get into that. But certainly as TVZ, to round off, we always Reaper expand, always 18 SCV scout. It is preferred if you go for a 2-gas 1-1-1 opener with a delayed third, so we can get the 6 Hellions and the 1 Liberator to do damage. Then with your 1-1 and your combat shields, you're trying to go for another push to try and either kill the 3rd base, kill the 4th base, do something. Because the Zerg player's only going to be sitting there and making a lot of drones if you have scouted your opponent and if you have followed those scouting rules and patterns that are laid out earlier on. So the first thing is, and I know a lot of people have joined and gone as well, so there may be a lot of questions because there could be some questions, there may not be. If you do have any questions specifically on TVZ in terms of timings or any generic questions, first of all, in the masterclass section, open the chat and please just write any questions that you have in there, and then I'll start answering them one at a time. If you do. Sometimes they don't. So if you do have it, you're either going into the open chat in the masterclass or you're going into the masterclass channel itself. You just joined, what did I miss? Quite a lot of stuff, but there will be a YouTube link and everything like that for you to go through as well. Basically about Terran and Zerg, Terran being the aggressor in the matchup, unless you're scouting something which you're then forced to be defensive. Either way, you will be ahead if you just follow those scouting patterns, but there will be a YouTube on it. If you scout fast roach roar and no third, what do you do? So there's many options here if you scout the roach roar. So the direct counter is obviously to go for banshees. Yeah. If you are going for the very quick 3cc, you may have to actually pull all of your units away from the natural. Yeah, you may have to do that. That may be a result, but it depends on when you scout it. So say if you go in with your 3-minute scout and then you look inside the main base and you still see gas and you see the roach roaring, you still have time to make a cyclone or a tank. That's completely up to you. If it's one base, I definitely would try and get a cyclone out as quickly as you can and then a tank. But if not, then no. If you want to directly if you don't want to directly blind counter, if you want to directly counter what you've scouted, then you have to go into banshees. That's the only difference. And then you're trying to push those roaches and those ravagers away. You've got your 3cc if you've gone for quick 3cc, or you've got your quicker banshee, your quicker starport if you've gone for the 2-gas 1-1-1 instead of the 3cc. The only other options are when you scout at 3 minutes is if you scout that they're still on gas. Hellion Banshee 3cc is only standard if you can do it correctly. So, as explained earlier on, most Terran players, when they're doing 3cc openers without the second gas early, don't actually do it right. And the right way to do it is as soon as your 3rd CC is completed, that mule that you make from the orbital needs to go onto the natural and then lifting up onto your 3rd. A lot of Terrans leave that 3rd CC there. And that's not the way you play 3cc. You need that 3rd CC to go down on location to take benefit of that mule. And your scouting needs to be top notch, yeah? So at 3 minutes, a Reaper in the main base to check whether they're still mining gas. If they're still mining gas, you can be in a lot of trouble. No, the mule needs to be made from the 3rd CC to the natural, not at the 3rd. So as soon as the 3rd CC, the reason why you've got the 3rd CC Swarmonomics is so that you can take a benefit of an extra scan or an extra mule. And if you're not doing that, well, I don't really know what you're doing. Yeah, because you may as well just go for a normal CC timing. If you go for so this from Medic Junior, Kelvin. I've already answered that question from the other player that was in there, Legoland. Medic Junior, if you go for a 1-1 time and then the Zerg decides not to go for a 4th base and just get a large army to crush the push, should you be defensive or drop? I think you've answered that question in the question itself there, Medic. So basically, when you're moving across the map with your double drop, your 16 Marine drop, your 16 Marine drop is designed so you're scouting through aggression to push creep towards wherever you're going to be fighting. You can use your 16 Marine drop also to go to a 4th base that he can or cannot be at. So if he's not at that 4th base, he'll definitely be at the other one. So With your Hellions, if you still have them alive and you don't throw them away, you need to be able to confirm when that third base is, that fourth base is. If you don't, then you have obviously got that risk, and you can't always play perfectly in every game. And that's the caveat to this game, and that's why we love it. So if he does go for more aggression, so normally with the 1/1 timing, if you're being aggressive and it's like Roach Ravagers, all you need to do is sit back, get 2/2, get a second factory, and 2/2 Marines and tanks. Absolutely crush Roaches and Ravagers. The Zerg player would then need to go into an AoE unit, preferably not Banelings. They normally would. Players like Eric, and there's another Zerg player that escapes my mind, will usually go for Infestors at that point, because it's a natural progression onto a hive. Are mules that good? Mules are very good, Tormonomics. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you know that. Mules are very good. How do you scout that the Zerg is doing a 66 drone cheese? You'll see that with your 16 Marine drop. You'll see the amount of units that they've got, because Zerg players usually don't half-ass a 16 Marine drop because they very much respect those. Now remember, this is for intermediate and beginner. In terms of a more of an expert level, so GM and above, what you would then do is confirm the fourth base, and then you would send that double drop to the fourth, and then you'd be able to see the drone count there. If you go for Hellion, you can scout drone count at third base. If no drones, then there might be a push. There we go. Yeah, if that's on 3 base or 2 base, yeah. There's a lot of questions coming in. This is good stuff. Yes, we are Zerg player here. Boptimal, yep, absolutely. There is, once I do submit this to YouTube, there was some recommendations for Zerg for stopping the scouting and stuff like that, so that might be quite useful to you. That's all right, I'm jumping into both of the chats anyway, Swarm, it's no problem. So does anyone have any questions, any further questions on TVZ itself? I know some of you come in quite late. And in addition, we'll be moving on to TVP next. So if anyone has any TVP replays, it would be really good to just have a look at them and understand what the fundamentals are in TVP and how the game went good and how the game went bad. And you can put that in either one of the masterclass sections. Good to know what the Terrans are doing, that's right.
I just need to check my replays to do it.
Of course.
Oh, am I supposed to be muted?
I'm glad you piped up. It's fine. It's not a problem, Caitlin. That's absolutely fine.
Well, no, because I haven't been muted the whole time.
That's right. I haven't heard you, so it's absolutely fine. If anyone's got a TVP replay and then after it'll be TVT, so please label your replays and I'll just be picking them at random, just to describe the fundamentals of the race, so that then at least you guys know you're confident enough that you're doing okay. Can you defend a Roach base, 2 base all in without a Banshee? I can't remember what you said about that. So say if you scout the Roach Roaring, depending on how late that Roach Roaring is. So if it's a Roach Roaring without 2 bases saturated, then you're looking at a very minimal Roaches that are coming across the map. So a Cyclone is probably needed. A tank may not be. A tank is like one of those... It's very difficult to keep a tank alive when there's early Ravagers. It has to be in a really good position behind a bunker. Otherwise it gets sniped by 3 annoying Ravagers. And you know who you Zerg players are. Yeah, so at least with the Cyclone, you can at least lock onto 1 or 2 of the units and slowly kill them. If then he goes for a lot of Lings, behind that you need to get around your bunker. It's really as simple as that. It's very difficult to scout those 3 Ravager Ling attacks. Sorry, I'm replying to the chat as well, Caitlin.
Yeah, I'm also trying to find the replay here. So you said label them?
Yep, just put TVP. Have you got a TVP one then, Caitlin?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'll have a look through that one, and then we can have a look. With the Cyclone, you can also snipe the Overlord. There we go. Absolutely right, Legoland. Leyline Smart TVP. So I'm going to have a look through this, Caitlin, while talking about the fundamentals of TVP. As part of the content, I've actually got all of you up on the screen as well, so you would see yourselves. You say hi, YouTube or whatever. It's up to you. So you'll all your names will be in there if you're okay with that as well.
Yeah.
There is a recording, yes, there is, and it'll be issued as a private YouTube video to Glacius. So if you need it, please talk to that main man there.
Okay.
Good stuff. So just going to go into that TVP now. So let's come out of this replay here. So we're going to quit this replay, and then we're going to go into another one, ley lines here. Now there will be a Zerg masterclass. I haven't quite discussed this with Glacius, but there is a Zerg masterclass that needs to happen at some point as well. So that'll be in probably about 3 to 4 weeks. So if people do need that, then please let me know some availability. So we're just about to jump in. Remember, any queries or questions on TVP, if it's on your mind now, please do put them in the chat. So remember, this is for beginners to intermediates, and especially master players that want to be a little bit more confident in their skin. Certainly, am I doing the right? Am I playing Terran, or am I playing Terran in the right conceptual way? And already, as before from the first matchup, Terran is the aggressive race. Now, unfortunately, Caitlin here, she's gone into the game and it's a random player. My God, random players. But it is what it is. Versus a random player, in general, you would go for a 17 scout. That is the only time you wouldn't go for an 18 scout. And the main reason why is you want a couple more seconds just to really, I don't know, untraumatize yourself depending on what race it is, because there's always a race that you don't want to play against, whether it's Protoss, Terran or Zerg. So you've got a couple more seconds to prepare yourself for perhaps some bullshit. Also, random players is a double-edged sword as well. So some random players are very good at one race and average on the other two, or they're just very average on all three of them. I mean, there's a third one which they're terrible at 2 and they're very good at 1. Basically, versus a random player, your vision and your scouting is paramount and very important, because they may play very unorthodox, because they've either watched a Euthermal video dictating that there's Ghost and Banshees and Hellbats that are good in a certain matchup, or Proxy Thors. There's a lot of things that random players like to do with their anonymity. So, without further ado, TVP itself, again, you are the aggressor in the matchup. The only time you are the defender in the matchup is when you are on even bases, and that's up to 2 bases. That's only at the start of the game. And the reason for that is very similar to Zerg. Your objective as a Terran is to try and limit the economy so that you're able to be on the same base count, to take a really abuse of your mules. Yeah. Now, there's a specific way to do that in TVP. Now, you can go for Reaper expands, but that doesn't really give you a lot of control within the game. So if you are the person that goes for 1 Reaper expand, it gives you very limited control on shorter maps if there's a lot of aggressive Protosses. Especially those Protosses that love to proxy, which a lot of them are really enjoying at the moment. Especially around about the Diamond and the Mid-Master Elo. So what I always recommend Terran players to do, and Protoss players do generally not like this, is open up double gas. And open up very similar to that you do in TVT, which is Reaper, Hellion and Reaper. And the reason why we go for that opening is because we want to snipe the first gateway unit that comes across the map. If we snipe the first gateway unit that comes across the map, instantly the Protoss player is not going to send another unit out on the map to then die. You can then get some free kills at his natural. So let's have a look at how Caitlin opens. If it is a normal Reaper opener, we will then try and have a look at some scouting timings that Caitlin can make use of. And let's try and put like a 3 to 5 point step plan to help Caitlin become better at TVP. With the overall intention is to just play more efficiently. Now, depending on who this player is, it may be impossible. The skill difference may be too big or too small, depending on what the player is. But we're going to have a look at this initially. On what
I think he's a diamond across the board.
Okay, fine. And
I checked his account. I think he's a diamond across the board with everything.
Is it all races? Okay, fine. So just a standard, I guess, probably a Protoss player. But going into the game, it's quite hard to know that. So, really early SCV scout here, but I admire the fact that you want to know whether the race, well, you need to know what race it is so that you can open up this double gas method here. Really ballsy here, shall I say, opening up double gas, and your opponent opening up double gas as well. Now, this is a really important scouting time in here, because now we have scouted absolutely everything that we need. The double gas and the double gateway. So those of you in the chat are going, oh my God, this is the mother load. This is insane. This is one of the best scouts that you could get in the early part of the game, because you know he is doing one thing and one thing only. There are going to be a lot of ground units coming your way. Now, you going into double gas, there are two options that you can do. You can open up your Reaper, Hellion Reaper, and risk losing that to 2 Stalkers if they are really committed. Or you need to go straight into a Cyclone, which again is very good against ground units. So if they're going for a lot of gateway units early on, and or if they're going for oracles, a Cyclone is your best friend. Yeah, Medivacs early on are very, very good too. The only time that you'd think of a Liberator, a Viking, or a Raven is to counter something that you believe is happening. So a Warp Prism, or you believe that there's a Proxy Immortal push or something like that. So right now, from the Protoss point of view, they are going aggressive instead of defensive early on. So they want the Terran to feel very awkward and feel very uncomfortable with where they're at. So let's have a look at how Caitlin approaches this. There's 2 gateways that's been seen. We're going for the Reaper. Hopefully we rush straight into that factory. There isn't a need to go for a really quick CC here. Yeah, there really isn't. So we can stay on the gas for a little bit longer if we need to, so that we can definitely get this Cyclone out. The first Reaper comes out. We can go for another Reaper. So, one point of contention here, Caitlin. We don't need the bunker because there's nothing to be defending this. So I appreciate you've gone for the bunker, because that is exactly what we need to try and achieve, which is defending a base if we made it. Yeah. Now, because you've gone for the bunker here, that is 100 resources that we may not get back. Because don't forget now, when the bunkers are salvaging, if they just get hit once by a Stalker, it stops salvaging. Yeah. So we do have to take that into mind now, that it's not always a free salvage. Yeah.
So even if you know you're going to be expanding, you don't build the bunker until you have the CC down.
You don't need to expand on the low ground, is what I'm saying. Yeah, you can expand on the high ground and go into Cyclones. That's absolutely fine. This isn't required for you to be able to defend. Now, you've scouted everything here that you need. Double gateways and the cybernetics core. And what Terrans like to do is they try and do even more things that they don't need to do here. So, Caitlin, all you need to figure out is there another proxy? Is there another pylon out on the map? Is he being even further aggressive here? Because you know it has to be an early two gateway attack here with 2 gateway units. And there can only be two Stalkers or 2 Adepts in most cases. So from your perspective, we try to be as defensive as possible here. And if we are moving across the map, it really is just a scout whether there is a proxy or not. There's nothing really wrong with the bunker here. It's just not really required. It's not really It's not really defending anything, is what I'm saying. So right now your Reaper goes in, which is great. Could pull some of the Stalkers back. Great. Now you know that it's 2 Stalkers. We go straight into the tech lab. Really, really good reaction here. And we go for the CC. Unlucky we lose the Reaper. But the Reaper shouldn't have been out on the map anyway. So that's 1 Reaper down that we should already have. Cyclone should be coming out as soon as possible, but we go for a tank. So, the pros and the cons against a tank and a Cyclone. Cyclone, very mobile, can move. Tank, can't move, just has to watch everything die around him. Do you all know that hamster meme where that hamster remembers World War II? That's what a tank is. Yeah. So, if you go for a tank, it kind of sits there on its Larry, on itself. If you go for a Cyclone, at least it can actually join in at the fun. Yeah. Second thing, we're going for another Reaper when there should be a reactor coming down. And then we're slowly going into our 1-1-1. Look at the CC and the Nexus timings. You're an even workers, Caitlin. You're doing a fine job. You're doing a fine ass job at the moment. So our mules already are going to carry us into victory. Yeah. Now with Terran, this is where, remember when I said earlier on in TVZ that aggression is about everything. But because we scouted our opponents being aggressive, yeah, early on, all we need to do is sit back. We can chill. We can use our mules here. Yes, we might be able to do any extra probe damage if we believe we're Maru or we believe we're beyond, but we don't need to believe that. We just need to look at the numbers at themselves. They're going to have a late Nexus. If a Nexus at all, you're going to be making units to defend. Just chill out a bit. So there should be a reactor coming down so you can start to get Marines out. And after the first Cyclone, then you'll go for a tank. And the main reason why is you save a little bit of gas as well going for the Cyclone too. So it should be a reactor coming down here. And again, we're being overly aggressive here rather than leaving the Reaper at home. Yeah?
So with the Reaper, seeing the 2 gas opener, so it's better to check around your base for a proxy pylon in contrast to this.
So an even better one, you've scouted 2 gases and 2 gateways, Caitlin. So not only the player is throwing as much stuff at you, he's throwing the kitchen sink as well. And all you need to do is weather the storm. Because once you've
you don't actually need to do anything.
No. You don't. Because you were even in workers. Mainly because he's gone for a committed attack on one base. And this is where a lot of Terrans can really struggle with, aggression, or defense. Is what did my opponent do at the start of the game? Did he open up standard that will allow him to have the worker count? No, he hasn't. If he goes for a Nexus after 2 gateways, well, I mean, that's just batshit crazy. Which, as a Protoss player, some of you are. I'm not going to lie to you. So, if you want to do that, that's fine. But at the moment, you don't need to be aggressive. You can just sit down, relax behind your bunker, or if you don't want a bunker, you're making a cyclone. You're just chilling out and you're going, right, what's next, Protoss buddy? That's it. That's all you need to do right now is chill. Yeah. And unfortunately,
I'm ahead by default. Oh shit.
Correct. Now, unfortunately, because of the way the game's that's gone, he's got even more stalkers here. And your CC is on the low ground, not the high ground. So now there's a possibility that he can do even more damage. 1 cyclone is going to take to kill 2 of these stalkers. 1 for the lock-on, and if you're really unlucky, you'll lose it. But 1 for the lock-on, and then he'll try and commit to the cyclone and then lose the second one. It's almost guaranteed at this point. But look at the worker count at the moment, Caitlin. It's insane.
I took a bit of a risk doing that. I don't actually usually build my CC on low ground like this. I gambled this a bit.
100%. And that's where you've just got to sit back and go, right, what did I see? I saw heavy aggression, double gas. Do I need to be aggressive against this? Not really. I'm going double gas myself. I can just fight fire with fire. Yeah?
So, in theory, Cyclone and the Reapers are in the bunker. Your CC's on the high ground, and you just defend your main.
You don't even need the bunker. You can just have your Reapers and your Cyclone coming out. Yeah?
So you just defend your main ramp.
You don't need to do anything. He will look at this natural and then walk back home because he'll go, well, he's on one base. That's cool. Our expansion's still coming down. Our workers are still going to be more than theirs. Mathematically, we don't need to do anything. Losing these workers here, now you're going behind. Or you'll start to, yeah? So you just need to chill. Just need to chill. Yeah. You can even go so far as, once you've got the starport, go for a medevac. Because guess what's behind now? Because he's going for stalkers and sentries and adepts earlier on. His technology, his Twilight, his Robo, his Stargate are all going to be delayed. Just because he's doing more stuff. Now, looking at the gas and the minerals below, you'd expect them to produce something. But a lot of them don't. It's because they're focusing on the wrong things. This Protoss player is trying to put you off of your game. Yeah? And trying to make you force mistakes from you, yeah, and that's what he's been able to achieve in this game. Is force that mistake, that one mistake, and then it snowballs out of control. Both Zerg and Protoss
the mistake
players.
Was sending the Reaper, bring it over.
The Reaper. First of all, the Reaper was absolutely fine going across the map if you really want to, but just keeping units at home and just trying to make sure that you're defending against the aggression first, yeah, the two gateways aggression, yeah. Because if he does no damage with his early 4 stalkers, what else has he got?
Nothing.
Exactly. We get the natural for free. We're sipping pina coladas with the amount of money we've got. We're high rollers. High ballers, should we say. But unfortunately with this, because there's only 1 Reaper in there, we don't have the reactor finished. We only can make 1 Marine at a time. It is going to be very, very difficult here. I like the tank here, but you don't need to really siege it. Lucky you got that shot off there. Wow, okay. But look at now the worker count. He's now fulfilled his mission. Yeah, he's fulfilled his mission of doing all of this damage. 19 workers to 26, and now the snowball begins. Now, if you're in this position, you don't need to FF straight away. No. Although I probably would recommend it. The only thing that I would do at this point, in all honesty and without any jokes, is I would either send a Liberator or a medevac drop or something just to try and keep the Protoss at home, or at least trade off some workers. Because you've lost some workers, you're going to now have to force them to lose some workers as well. So from an unbiased point of view, if I was a Protoss, what I don't want at this stage is a Liberator in my base because I haven't got Blink. Is a mine drop happening in my base, or, you know, stuff like that. I want them to be a frontal push because I've got loads of gateways, or certainly 2 gateways I can make from. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So again, because this player plays unorthodox and random, he or she will be playing really weird. And we can see in the Fog of War on the top left hand side there's double robos. So instead of double rainbows, we have the double robos. So right now, 34 workers to 23. We are massively behind in terms of mineral count. This will slowly get easier and easier for us, but is now down to whether the Protoss player will be making mistakes rather than ourselves. So if the Protoss players makes mistakes, then we could get into the game. But we have to play as good as we can to get back. So the way we do that is we can't wall off with engineering base. And the reason why we can't do that, and I know why you've done it, Caitlin, and it's a fantastic idea. But if he's going to go 4 stalkers into 16 zealots, that is interesting. Yeah, that is a very interesting opener. We can start to wall this off with supply depots when we get time. Because at the moment, we need those minerals to make workers, to make marines, to make something, to get 2 barracks and then 1 engineering bay instead of 2. You only need 1 engineering bay versus Protoss, just a +1 attack.
I think I did this reactionary because if you look at my vision, I saw a Twilight Council, but I don't know if I saw the robo. Do I see the robos? Can we check? No. Oh. Okay, I have less vision than I thought. Never mind.
So right now, the only reason... I understand why you've done it, because as Terran, remember at the very first start versus Zerg, we kind of think that Fog of War is very scary. But you actually have a lot of information more than you know. That there will be a lot of ground units. Now, you're just worried that he's going to walk around your bunker again. There's nothing you can do about that, even if he does. Yeah, but making these 2 engineering bays is not going to help it. Yeah, maybe in the one-off instance versus 1,000 players, maybe. But to get back into this game, we need workers, we need units, and we need to go for a big 2-base all-in. We're talking 5 racks, 1 factory, and 1 starport. Balls to the walls. It's the only thing you can do right now to even have a chance, and you haven't even got that at the moment with how much worker difference it is. So right now, the only reason why you're in this position is because our reaction wasn't sufficient to what we scouted. That was all. We were just a little bit too confident to make a bunker in the low ground, which didn't defend anything. Yeah, it tried to, but it couldn't because we made the extra Reaper and we weren't able to get the Cyclone out as quickly as we could. Great scout. No 3rd base. Really good, Caitlin. That's fantastic. Extra gateway. So now this guy's doubled down on aggression. But because this player is so rich, they can double down and continually push you back whilst grabbing an expansion. That's what being ahead in economy allows them to do. Yeah?
So, double gas or single gas, are you just never supposed to expand on the low ground like this?
If you're going single gas and there's a double gateway, you can grab a bunker in the natural because your extra marines will be out earlier because you'll go Reaper, Marine, won't you, rather than Reaper, Reaper. So marines are like 18 seconds or something, and then Reaper's like 32 or something. So you can almost make 2 marines by the time you can make a Reaper. So you could have had 2 marines and a Reaper in that bunker whilst your factory's going from a Reaper expand. Yeah.
Okay.
So does the way your opponent opened counter double gas? Kind of, in its own weird way, but you still counter him because you've still got the early factory to make the Cyclone. There's nothing he can do to out-micro your Cyclone apart from all-in with those stalkers on that Cyclone. Physically jumping on that Cyclone. Yeah, so as soon as you've locked onto one stalker, unless his micro is pretty damn good, that stalker's dead. Yeah, and then the Marines and Reapers just chase everything else down. Basically, with 2 Reapers and a Cyclone, you can almost kill 2 to 3 Stalkers quite easily. But that's providing that we are playing defensive at that point because we've scouted aggression. That's like scouting a 1-base Roach Warren and then going on the low ground expansion, Caitlin. Yeah, that's the equivalency, should we say? So, does anyone have any questions so far in TVP at the moment concerning a lot of these these items are here. Even regarding the reaction to TVP and reacting to 2 gateways coming across the map. If anybody does, I'll leave a couple of moments in there. If you defend the push, what is the follow-up? So, very good question, Kelvin. So if you defend the push, what we're doing is a 2-base attack. And the reason why we're doing a 2-base attack is because the economy from the Protoss player is less than what they would have done if they would have normal gateway expanded. And you've got 2 mules. And you've got an insane amount of economy that comes through. So you're going for 2 barracks, 1 engineering bay, then adding your gases. Then once you've saturated your natural, you're going up to that 5 racks. Stim and win push on 2 bases. It's very difficult for a Protoss to come back. What do you do with your starport? There's a number of things you can do depending on what you scout. So if you scout a Twilight, most Terrans will go for a... Well, I say most Terrans. Aggressive Terrans will go for a Banshee. And they will go for a Marine tank Banshee push. If you want to play a defensive Terran with your Stim, Combat Shield and +1, then you need to go for a Raven. Or if you don't want to do either, why would you push with the Banshee? Mainly because the Banshees not only affect the way that the Stalker's relationship to firing from ground to air, but also if you've got Marines and tanks next to the Banshee or near the Banshee, the Stalkers can't get in range. So the Banshee kills everything that can't shoot up, and then the tanks can kill everything that can shoot up. So does that make... Hopefully that makes sense. And with a couple of SCVs, you can slowly heal things and whatnot. Yeah. So just currently asking questions at the moment here. So any other questions in TVP itself? One more question. Generally in TVP, how important is that you see the first tech building? It's quite important because then you know the difference between making a Cyclone or a tank, or a Raven and a Liberator, or a Raven and a Medevac. So basically, if you scout a Stargate, you're going for Marine Cyclone at least, yeah, to be able to deflect, or a mine. You could go for a mine, but a Cyclone's much better. If you're going to go for the aggressive option in TVP with the Marine Cyclones, you're making 2 Cyclones and then a tank, and then 2 Vikings and then a Liberator, and you're going straight across the map with those units. And the reason why you do that versus Stargate, and everybody knows this if you do play Protoss or played against Protoss, is Stargate is like a flying gateway unit going across the map. The more Stargate units that they create, the less gateways that they can create and less ground army they're going to have. They're more likely to grab that 3rd base really, really quickly as well. So you get to be able to punish that. Yeah? Punish that quite quickly. So you can get in between the bases. I usually screw it up and don't see. Yep. Usually you can scout it with the repot. You can assume if it's adept opener, then it's most likely going to be a Stargate, but there are really weird players out there. Do you go missile turrets against the Stargate when you push out? Nope, because if he moves across the map with the Oracle, that's 1 less unit that he has to defend. Remember, there is no overcharge anymore. So overcharge isn't as strong as it once was. So with Vikings and Cyclones and Marines shooting at Stalkers, they do die under the shield battery now. Yeah, and remember, a Twilight Council doesn't produce units. This is what's really important. When I'm doing my private coaching sessions, a lot of players get scared of Twilight Councils. You can be aggressive versus Twilight Councils because they have a lack of units. Twilight Councils enable you to produce better gateway units or tech up into something that is more of value. Yeah? So a Twilight Council is a greedy opener in terms of an army management situation. So take note of that. The best way to be able to all-in someone is from a Twilight Council opener, because they can't make an Immortal, they can't make a Void Ray, and they can't make an Oracle. 3 units that are very, very good at defending versus ground and air. Yeah? Well, not the Immortal, it just shoots the ground, really. Do you go with Stargate from the push out? And this on 1 base or 2? It's a 1.5 base push, really. So it's like, once you get 2... All Terran pushes that are 1.5 base happens between the first 2 units out of your factory. So if it's 2 tanks or 2 Cyclones, that's normally what happens. Or 2 mines. The 2 mines go into the medevac. Yeah. So it's normally come in 2s, and then you're waiting for the 3rd unit as you're going across the map, and you pull 3 to 4 workers. I can see Lauren typing as well. You don't have stim with this. No, you don't. Not from a 1.5 base push. Nope, you can definitely stim and win without stimming and winning, basically. Does anybody else have any TVP replays? Because I certainly know where this is heading, but I'll give Caitlin the respect of having a look through the remainder of the game. But you're spamming Marines, yeah, just from your reactor.
You'll be surprised by what happens if, by the way, you've been commentating this. I think you might get surprised.
Well, if you do win this, Caitlin, very, very well done. But we'll have a look. We'll have a look into the game and show the respect that you deserve for issuing that replay. Did anyone mention the? No idea how it's called. The 2030C build in TVP. That's my favourite. Well, good for you. But the higher you go up, you will get punished by 4-gate blink stalkers. Usually, it's aggression with double gas that is much more consistent at sort of intermediate levels of play. Aggression is everything about a Terran. It's the fundamentals of how to play Terran, really. So is there any other questions based on what we've seen so far at the moment? What do you do if you screw up the Reaper trying to Maru all in the probes and you don't know the tech? Well, you've just lost a Reaper. Well done, Swarm. That was a fantastic end question. There's nothing you can do. You've lost the Reaper. There's not much I can say about that. Just try and keep your Reaper in a position where you try to scout. Yeah. Swarm's only messing, Medic. It's alright. So, you're really not messing. Yeah, you definitely don't GG if you lose the Reaper. You'll just have to try and do something. So you're either going for a 1.5 base push or just sit back on 2 bases and go +1 stim and combat shield push. Many players don't like the fact that TVP is so aggressive. And that's okay. You're more than happy to have your own opinion. But the consistent way of playing, don't try to scout instead. And yet, what I see every single pro at high level stream do: kill work and lose the Reaper without getting the info. But they're professional players, Lauren. You from a ladder game to a professional game in tournaments, they're different. So they could have lost that Reaper because they're trying to figure out whether there's a specific time on the gas. Because what you have, Lauren, and this is actually a really, really good point. I'm glad you brought this up because this is really, really good to talk about just as in the interim, is when pro players are playing against each other, they do tend to play against the player, not the race. So each player will be familiar with what players play against. So on ladder, if you played against the same people all the time, do you think you'd change things a little bit to help you out versus that kind of player? Oh, this player likes to go DTs. Oh, this player likes his 2 base aggression. You get to almost have a preconceived idea of what the player's doing. And that's kind of what players do at professional levels, is they scout what their opponent is, well, not scout what their opponent is doing, but they have a lot of information sometimes on their opponent, whether they're better than their opponent or not, and they will try and execute their build order. Sometimes they will improvise halfway through. And it's very hard not to lose the Reaper against a professional player, especially if they've got Stalkers in its mana. It's very difficult not to lose the first Reaper because their stutter stepping is really good. But yeah, it's always to do with the scout. If you're an ordinary human being up to Masters and low GM, your Reaper is designed to scout. Anything else, you are not using a Reaper for its intended purpose. Happy to continually say that because it has worked for more than 8+ years. If Protoss doing Phoenix opening and keep an eye on you in your base, what should I do? Again, he's going for a flying Stargate unit, so that's a gateway. Every Phoenix that he produces is one less gateway to his army. So when that happens, there's going to be a lot less ground army. So if you just go 2 or 3 Cyclones and loads of Vikings, you ultimately get to deny the 3rd base in most instances. Grab 2 barracks behind it, and then go into an aggressive push, or you can grab a 3rd TC, but in TVP, when you do grab a 3rd TC, your opponent only needs to make Blink Stalkers if you do not have tanks to win the game. That's all they need to do, and I cannot stress that enough, by how easy it will be for your opponent to punish you if you do make a 3rd TC. If you get away with it, fantastic, really, really good, but if you can get really heavily punished for being greedy as Terran. Because if Terran was designed to be greedy, it would be designed in a whole different way. We certainly wouldn't have mules. So let's have a look at the remainder of this game, just because we got a little bit off track there. So let's have a look at how Caitlin attempts to get back into this game. And again, look at that. A Liberator comes out, more of an aggressive push here. Great scout with the Reaper here. You've got a lot of information here. It's at 6 minutes 30. So even if it dies here, Caitlin, you've got enough information. Another bunker does come down, though. but that's probably because you didn't scout, or the lack of scouting a third base there. You're quite worried. So again, you're going across the map with a Liberator, something that I said that your opponent will definitely not like, especially if they've gone for early aggression. So this is fantastic. And now you've evened up the worker count. So now, Caitlin, after a period of 40 seconds, we've now got back into the game. Insane. This Protoss player is definitely absolutely fuming, because I would be. The only thing now we've got to do is, once we've kept them on 2 bases, or we haven't kept them, he's made that mistake of going for a 2-base attack, is trying to see why they're staying on 2 bases for so long. And unfortunately, in this instance, we do have these Colossus. So let's see how we're able to deal with them. We do see the Colossus going across the map, although we might not have. Oh, we do see them now. So let's see. We've got a Liberator as well, and we're going out with the mines. So, okay, all right, Caitlin, all right. You're showing off now with these mines. Yeah, buddy.
Not really. I just
And
don't
look
want
at
to die.
that. That's brilliant. Well, you've killed a lot of his zealots. The tanks are here playing. And guess what, Caitlin? He's on equal bases to you, and you're playing defenses. Imagine if you did that from the start of the game. Game would have been completely different.
Yeah,
Caitlin.
the game is over if you... Yeah, the game is over.
100%.
The shenanigans didn't happen in the beginning.
100%. So now we can feel very comfortable and go, right, if the Protoss is on the same base count, we can just step off the pedal a little bit. We can make a load of units. All we need to know is why they're staying on the same base count as us. This is great. So he's made...
TVP, even base count, you can stay defensive and you're fine.
Correct.
But if you're ahead, you stay aggressive? Which way does this work?
So,
because if they're ahead in bases, you're trying to kill a third.
Okay. So,
but if you expand before them, are you dead?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. So, it is a risk to expand before Protoss, because Protoss have a lot of mobility in the middle parts of the game.
Yeah.
Through Warp Prism and Blink Stalkers and things like that. So if you find yourself in a lead of some sort, so we're ahead economically, but we're not ahead in terms of the army, because we don't really have the right army yet. We have the right army if he attacks into us, but we don't have the right army if we're out in the open, perhaps. Yeah, because he's got a lot of Colossus. So all you need to do now is you can simply make more units. So you can just go up to your Viking count, scan whether he's got the third base, and what does he have? A limited. What can he not do here? What is most of his money into at the moment?
Colossi.
So what can Colossi not do?
You can't blink into a main or something. But
There
you
we
can't
go.
really. Well, you can't really walk into the main. Well, you can, but you shouldn't.
Correct. Yeah, but also
technically you can.
What does that mean that the Protoss cannot do to you when you're trying to harass them? When you're trying to harass them, what can they not do with the Colossus?
Blink.
There we
well,
go,
you can't
buddy.
Attack air. You can't attack air.
Blink was that was an instant reaction from you, because why don't we normally drop into Protosses? Because they've got Blink.
Blink.
Correct. If they haven't got Blink, Caitlin, you've just unlocked the beast. Very well done. And now, seeing this, you can almost be on that aggression path now, and literally on the way to your third base, if you do need one, which you're grabbing now, the same time as the Protoss, may I add, you can now start to pick apart your opponent. Well done, Caitlin. You've absolutely understood it. This is perfect. But it's just getting that information now is going to be the hardest, yeah? It's getting that information and be in that position. But you've got it. That's perfect. Because now, we can now start to pull them apart. Liberator in the natural. Well, maybe without this cannon. Or in the main. Do we have one in the main? Here we go. If we control the Liberator a bit. And maybe a Marine drop here, getting ready to snipe all the workers from the third. Meanwhile, you're chilling at home. You're making your Viking count up. What else is he going to do? The only other thing he can do right now is go from Colossi into Storm, going to Colossi into Mass Gateway units. Because for him to max out on Colossus, he's going to take ages. I'm definitely going to grow a beard and definitely look more like Santa by the time that he's got 200 with Colossus. That's for sure. Yeah.
So you're looking for the transition.
You're not. You're just looking at what he's got and what can't they do. So with Terran, you reactively scout and you're reactively trying to improvise. So seeing this army, you could put two of these units in the medevac. You could load 2 medevacs and try and snipe the third if you wanted to. That way, if your third becomes available and done, you at least know he hasn't got a third base, right? Look at that. And you've done that all from this scan as well. Brilliant. fantastic. You've had some good information in this game, Caitlin. It's just a shame for the early game. That was it. Without the early game, Caitlin, you'd have been absolutely fine. So let's have a look.
Well, no, we're watching the one-off game where I CC on the high ground. I don't actually do that usually. I actually don't.
Good.
That was the one-off BS that I decided to pull.
And look, this player, he or she, this player is getting ready to fight at any point, because right now, the longer this game goes on, if you're able to get that third base and you're able to get these Vikings out, there's nothing that really shoots up apart from Forward Stalkers. So now with you being unsieged here and looking to be aggressive, yeah, do we see the third base? We don't even see whether the player's got a third base. We're putting ourselves at a risk, especially we don't even have combat shields. So when they swap once, basically the Terran's legs are falling off, yeah? So we need
I think it's about to finish.
I bloody hope so. And hopefully we get to snipe some of these bad boys as well, because that's a lot of damage lost very early on. But again, combat shields isn't done, and we've just lost a hell of a lot of our units. Yeah. So we've gone from now being like, yeah, we're really confident, and then going, oh no. So do we attack into something like we don't need to? Our third base isn't even done. We haven't got enough Vikings. We can send 2 medevac drops across the map. We know he hasn't got a blink. And look at what your opponent is already thinking that he needs to get, because he now knows that there's a possibility. Blink. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Because he now knows that if you go into a lot of Vikings and you're able to hold on to 3 bases, he's in big trouble. All right? You can almost see it from their reaction. And then unfortunately, we killed 2... To be fair, you did kill 2 Colossus, so I can't really be upset with you there.
But it's not worth the trade of the army that I lost, I don't think.
Not at that point.
3.
But killing...
Actually,
I mean,
well, 4.
killing
4
these
now.
Colossus now, I mean, that's not doing too bad at all. But for the sake of sending 2 medevacs across the map and having these tanks in position where the Colossi can't hit anyway, and then killing that third, you're disgustingly ahead. And look at what he's doing. He's transitioning now into Storm and into more Gateway heavy. Exactly what I said that they would do, because that is what is weak about what he's doing. So this is actually working out for you pretty well. But if we had have got combat shields, maybe that would have been slightly different. And now you're going on the aggressive because you killed a couple of Colossus. I can't blame you, because you've been trying to defend for the past like 9-10 minutes here. So I can't blame you here. So this is a good way of attacking into a Protoss. So whatever army that you've got is attacking in between the bases. Loads of players disagree with this because they think charge lots are very scary. The only way to really make a Protoss choose between defending one base or another is going in between them. Their less defense base will be the one that they've just come from. So 2 to 3 bases, a Protoss will normally make a shield barrier. There we go. But normally in their natural, they will neglect to make one, because at the start of the game, they will just be making their units there. They have no need for a shield battery. So when you're a Zerg and a Terran and you're going for a big push, try and go in between the bases, because normally they've got their whole army and loads of shield batteries and cannons here in most of their games. This is from basic to intermediate, probably all the way up to Masters too. That's a great siege tank position there. Great Liberator position in there as well. Unfortunate that there's an Archon here that's going to be taking a lot of the damage, and the Liberator's not in position here. But we do have some Vikings doing some insane amounts of damage, and he is losing a lot of these Colossi as well, which is good, really, really good for you. Really, really good here, Caitlin. You've got into a really good position in between the bases, and who said tanks weren't good in TVP, right? Especially if
I think it's fine as long as you're not dealing with mass charge. As long as that's not a thing, then you're not so screwed.
And the unfortunate part is, because we've taxed ourselves in a lot of unit production, a lot of micro, there isn't a lot of units that are coming back, and they can warp in units immediately, and that's the hardest part. So the only thing you can do here is defend your tank and your Liberator as much as you can and trade out the units. Because as soon as you leave these tanks and the Liberators alone, look, he instantly jumped onto it. Yeah, we could have traded out an Archon and a couple of these units very, very easily here. I appreciate you wanting to kill the
So it's not worth the depower? Not
really, and the reason why is because if they lose more army every time that they're coming out, it's very similar to Zerg actually. So and Terran, in all matchups, you can only focus on 1 or 2 things: attacking the army or the economy. If you're focusing on both, usually you don't have enough to kill both. Yeah, so you either focus on one or the other. as a fundamental, your main objective is to kill the army so that they cannot defend their bases. So if you kill all of these stalkers and zealots, now you can depower it after if you have enough time. You can get away with the Vikings if there's 2 Colossus, and the Colossus can't shoot up. So now you're in a position where you've killed his early units. They have to warp in more bad units versus your bio. That's what you want him to do. Food for thought there. Very good game so far, Caitlin. I'm actually quite enjoying this game. I'm not going to lie to you.
Except for that shenanigans.
This is great. No, this is really good. This is a really good game. Now, again, he's got a heavy ground composition, so we need to make sure that we do have things like... So we notice that he's gone for charge. We do need a couple of mines if we haven't got tanks. So tanks allowed us to at least sort of kind of trade versus the charge lots, even though they were running into our army. Yeah. Now, we've seen his... Yeah, we've killed a lot of units here. So you're going really aggressive, which is great, and this is fantastic. But what you've also done is killed most of his stalkers. So you're going for another ground push against a heavy ground army. Use your mobility.
I think this is a bait. I don't think this is legit. I think this is a bait.
Yeah, use your mobility with your medevacs.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I would say to you. Do something that he can't. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is much better.
Yeah, I think that was a bait when I did that.
Just try to do that first of all, so that you don't lose all 4 medevacs. Because 4 medevacs is a lot more expensive. Great job here. And look at how much he's really struggling. And all we need to do is try to make sure we get out of as many units as we can, and try not to lose all of these medevacs. Because if we do, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, we lose 1.
Yeah. Yeah. RIP in peace. Poor medevac.
So it's better to abuse the mobility first. Just
Correct.
Drop the main instead of
kill
the army.
Kill some workers, get the hell out of Dodge. Yeah?
Okay.
Kill the workers, get the hell out. Because then, if you have all of those units ready, they're now ready for the next fight. You don't have to make any more medevacs. You can make Liberators, Vikings, whatever you need. And you've got what is known as free damage. Yeah? So that was a good decision for you to use mobility to do damage, is basically what I said there. But you should have been thinking of that first, basically, after a trade like that.
Okay.
But we got... Well, we can see from map packs here, but yeah, this guy's attacking into Liberators here, which is never a good idea. And you've got Ghosts, which is perfect as well. So with the Liberators, they're going to do a lot of damage. Walks into all of this. Oh my god,
yeah,
Protoss players, close your eyes.
I don't know why he did that.
Close your eyes, Protoss players. Holy Lord. And now Caitlin's running across the map. My god. And it somehow worked out for you. Very, very good. But you see in certain stages in the game, it could have been much easier for you to do A or B, yeah? But the thing is, we need to train brains to go, right, this is the better option because I've seen this. So you've just now reset his army. So the best thing for you to do here, go across the map and abuse this. And continually snowball this out of control, which is great, which is what you're doing. This is brilliant. Imagine if we did this earlier. This is fantastic. Now we're recouping, going across the map again, and constantly putting the pressure. Now it's easy for us to say, constantly put under pressure from twice the amount of supply, but this is what Terran are designed to do. You can never let them relax, because you're going to force out loads and loads of warpings, loads of useless gateway units that come out. So
there's no such thing as the breaks, damn it. There's no such thing as the breaks.
True, very, very true. That's a really good replay, Caitlin, that you've shown us, because there's a lot of things that you could have changed the outcome even earlier as well. Yeah.
So Cyclone instead of tank, bunker wasn't needed because you just expand on high ground.
Correct. Very good though, Caitlin, because you were being very defensive on 2 bases, he was being very aggressive on 2 bases, and then you won. Very, very good. But then some of those decisions on does he have blink, doesn't he have blink, there's got to be something that they haven't quite... So when you're trying to get back into a game, there's something that they've risked not getting from doing their aggression. So with that double stalker opener, all that technology, that blink, that charge, the DTs,
delayed.
Anything like that, everything's delayed, 100%. All right. Very, very good. Very, very good. I think now, unfortunately, that'll probably be the end of the TVP section. So if you have missed that, some of you may have to go back into the, it'll be the private YouTube video that I sent to Glacius. We're now going to move on to TVT. So does anyone have a normal TVT opening or a TVT opening that we have here, whether it's Reaper, Hellion Reaper, Reaper Expand, anything like that, so that we can look into the fundamentals. And just to recap over the fundamentals of TVP, Terran are inherently aggressive. And the reason why they're inherently aggressive is because if you can get your opponent onto even work accounts with your mules, you can then start to trade a hell of a lot better. With your mules, you can push yourself even further into a winning position. Yeah, because minerals are very, very important in this game. Again, this is for basics up to intermediates, up to Masters 2. If you're a GM player and above, when you're playing TVP, you need to abuse the double gas opener. You need to abuse the mobility that is associated with the double gas opener. So your Reaper, Hellion Reaper, if you do kill the first gateway unit, it's the holy grail to a lot of GMs. You then get to almost kill as many workers in the natural as to become even in work accounts with the Protoss, and all you need to do is do a big 2-base attack. If you're not doing a 2-base attack with +1 combat shields and stim versus Protoss will then be able to do whatever that they want. They will be able to spend chrono on anything that they want, and you're just allowing them to get to the later stages of the game. But there is a caveat to playing a very defensive, macro-orientated Terran. You won't lose against a lot of really batshit crazy all-in Protoss players because you're playing so defensive. But you will lose against the players that are taking risks, that are going for the double forges. So your vision and your scouting is very, very important with your aggression. So if you're doing a mine drop, you need to take note of what the tech buildings are. If you scout a Twilight Council and you're doing a 1.5 base push, we need to deny the 3rd base while we're going for an extra 2 barracks or a 3rd TT. Like, if you don't do either one of those things, you have to feel inherently behind because you have chosen to move that army across the map. So does anyone have a TVT opening, or certainly a TVT replay that we can have a look at? It can be at any level whatsoever that you can share within the masterclass itself, so we can have a look at what are the advantages and the disadvantages, and allowing you to be a little bit more confident within that matchup itself. So I'll give a couple of moments, and if not, I'll certainly try and find a TVT on one of these accounts here. One move for TVT? Perfect. It's all right, Caitlin. I've just got one here. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay. Very confused versus BC. Well, BC aren't really that scary, and the reason why they're not that scary is mainly because you're inherently going into Vikings from your opener itself. Okay. So, hello newcomers. We've got a lot more newer players that are in here. So, too bad I'm not on my PC. That's true, JJ. Is there anybody got any questions on the matchup itself before I go into TVT? Because TVT and mirror matchups when we're doing these masterclasses are the exception to the rule. Obviously, Terran are mainly aggressive, and there is an element of aggression in TVT, but it comes as a form of map control. But is there any questions in TVT before we start at all? I think what he means, Boptimal, is whether he can send a replay, and that's probably what he's saying about that. So does anybody have any queries on TVT? Do we need a PVZ replay next? No, Pineapple, this is just for Terrans at the moment. And this is for intermediate to basic, to allow players in mid-masters and below to be able to be a little bit more confident in their play. And obviously, if there's any specific questions, please feel free to just direct message me. Like, I coach a lot of players each week, and I'll be able to easily give you some information on to get to top 50 GM, top 100 GM, things like that.
I have no questions that aren't smart-ass questions.
Oh, nibble. He's a Protoss player, by the way, so that makes sense.
Hey, I'm a Gold League Terran.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So, if about that last one, would you say that went very well with just the minimal errors?
There was quite a lot that we did wrong there, Caitlin, at the start of the game. But because the Protoss was aggressive, you were able, just with your tanks, just to kill units. The Protoss player could have just taken 3 bases and run away with the game. So the Protoss made an incorrect decision for no reason. There was no need to do that. But what was good for you is as soon as you started to kill some of the units, is you then took it upon yourself to be even more aggressive, which is really good. A lot of Terrans would just kill a couple of Colossus and then sit back until 200. Okay, so I open with Reaper and Marine. Is there an ideal position to defend the first Reaper? Reaper pad versus ramp. Right. So that's a very good... Let's back this up a little bit. That's a very good question. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the relationship here between the double gas Reaper expand and the Reaper expand here. And what's really, really important here is if you're going double gas in TVT, yeah, especially on a really, really long map, if your opponent is going single gas, there is an element of you need to be able to do something with your gas advantage. So probably about sort of 4 or 5 seasons ago, whoever had the most gas as Terran was usually in the lead, bearing in mind whether it's a top level play or at the pro level play, specifically because you had the factory in the starport quicker to get damage done. So gas first, double gas isn't necessarily a thing now in TVT, and I'll explain that just in a moment. But the standard TVT opening to be able to control the game from start to finish is a double gas opening here. So it goes supply depot, barracks, gas, gas. That's all it does. It's not gas, barracks, gas. It's barracks, gas, gas. You're making one SCV all the time. This is without timings because we don't really need timings. It's not really that important. As long as you're making a barracks, you're making 2 gases, and you're making one SCV at a time on one base, you should be fine all the way up to mid-masters. Now, the more important question here is, do you SCV scout with a double gas? A lot of players disagree with me and say you don't need to. However, I will always 18 SCV scout regardless of the matchup, because it is ladder that you're playing on, not a tournament. If you're playing in a tournament, then this is for the people that are sort of top masters and in GM. You need to take a certain amount of risks sometimes. You don't always need to. If you're the better player, you don't need to. But always having an 18 scout, you have the information of whether your opponent goes double gas as well. So what's the advantage of you being a Terran and knowing that he's going double gas when you go in double gas? You don't feel the need to then go across the map and do damage. You can then perhaps counter what you think he's doing. So if he's going to continue to make 1 Reaper at a time, you might want to go 1 Reaper and then a reactor, and then double pump Reapers. You might want to go reactor straight away and double pump Reapers automatically. So you've got a lot of streamers like Juggernaut Jason. You've got a lot of I say a lot of streamers. You've got some streamers as Terran, Juggernaut Jason, Hero Marine, that play 2 sometimes completely different ways. You've got really passive Juggernaut Jason with 2 or 3 Reapers and 2 or 3 Hellions. So for 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions, and he will sit at his natural. Or you've got Hero Marine, which would be Reaper, Hellion, Reaper, right into a Cyclone. So it all depends on who you are as a player. But most efficiently, when you're playing double gas and you've scouted a double gas, ideally you really want to rush for a Cyclone. So Reaper, Hellion, Reaper into a Cyclone. The reason being is you want to just have better units out at that point. So if you've got 2 Marines, 2 Reapers and a Hellion and a Cyclone versus 3 Reapers and 2 Hellions, not only are you ahead in gas at that point because you haven't made any further Reapers, but you've also not wasted a further 100 minerals on a Hellion as well, which can make a massively different... It makes a big difference, especially if you're using Cyclones for vision. So just, instead of all of that word salad, TVT in general, double gas openers, Reaper, Hellion, Reaper, into a reactor and a tech lab. So you're going Marine, Cyclone, and you're choosing your Stargate, your Starport. Jesus, we're almost playing Protoss now. Your Starport to either going for a Viking opener if you think that the Terran's going 1 base, or you're going straight into that Raven and the 3rd gas to your natural. That is, in a general consensus, how you're opening up into TVT. You can open up even more greedier, even more aggressive. It's up to you. But that is the fundamental, just general build order. And if you're just a better player than your opponent, just open up Reaper, Hellion, Reaper and applying some aggression, a lot of players will crack. Now, on to the question of JJ, if he goes Reaper expand, you definitely need to 18 scout if you're Reaper expanding, by the way. But if you see a double gas and you're going Reaper expand, the one thing I'd advise you to do is after your Reaper and you go for a Marine, is you get a bunker in your natural. Because if your opponent goes 2 Reapers and a Hellion, your Reaper and your Marine are going to die. Yeah. In addition, he just needs to jump up into your main base with 2 Reapers and kill the only Reaper that you've got here. So you may want to make more than 1 Marine out of your barracks. Yeah. A lot of players will delay their reactor for a long time. Yeah. They will delay it. They would just keep making Marines if they're playing very, very aggressive or greedy. The only maps that you do Reaper expands on are maps like Site Delta, where your natural has not got a level, yeah? Or sorry, has got a level, has got a ramp to it. The only time that you can get away with it consistently in a competitive sense, in a consistent sense, is when your natural is on a different level than the rest of the map. So it's got a ramp that comes towards it, because then the bunker can just sit on top of that. That's the only time that Reaper expand in TVT can be somewhat viable. And a good example, again, is Site Delta. But again, U18 Scout, just in case there's some dirty double racks cheeses, which again, when you're going up into more of the expert league, so going up to top masters and GM, there are a lot of Reaper rushers out there, all right, and a lot of Marauder rushers. They love 3 points because players play standard. That's why the advice is different in this masterclass with mid-masters and below to GM players, because GM players actually, there's a hell of a lot more cheese, plus they've got more behind it as well. When you're going mid-masters and below, you just need to be able to have a routine, be able to scout all the time, and then slowly be able to perfect what build that you've chose to do. But all I'm doing today is just making sure that you guys have a general sense of how you're opening up. So, Medic Junior is going for a 1 gas opener here. And he's going to be scouting with the SCV here, or looks to be scouting here. Let's have a look. So he's going across the map with this SCV. He's going for the double gas opener here. So a little bit later on the second gas, but that's okay. And then we'll be going into the Reaper expand. Now we're going into his base. So, good luck, have fun. Really, really late. Good luck, have fun here. And now, what's really, really good here is hopefully Medic Junior sees that back. So that's really, really good. So the most important things that Medic Junior here has seen is double gas versus double gas. And this is perfect for you. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. So you've now seen exactly how he's opened to how you've opened. Does your opponent have the same information? Not as of yet. But it looks like he's going to do something cheeky that's here. So, as a Terran player, at 2 minutes to 2 minutes 5 is when your first Reaper is going to come out. Yeah. So you've got until 1 minute 50 to see where this factory is going, because now Medic Junior's come out of his base. Yeah. So this SCV could actually just make another factory here or another starport. Yeah. So because you've scouted double gas Medic Junior, you don't have to be on the aggressive here. It's better to be on the defensive, because the other player has to go all the way across the map to scout you. So as somebody that's playing on ladder, you just leave your SCV here until the 1 minute 50 mark. You check that your factories come down and his factories come down. And then you're no longer using your Reaper to go across the map. The Reaper can then be used to scout for any proxies that you may find. Yeah, which is exactly what this guy looks to be doing here. And that's not because I can see the replay. It's because that should be a standard across the board. Double Reaper into reactor. And we need to make a Hellion at the start. We need to make sure that when we're moving across the map with the Reaper, it's the right decision. Very similar in TVZ, when we move across the map with the Hellion, it's the right decision. So right now, this Reaper is going to be scouting around. This could be a proxy starport opening. A lot of players used to do this, like Future and things like that. Very, very good opening. Very, very annoying opening as well. So your Reaper here, yeah, and I'm just going to check the chat in a minute just in case Medic said anything, but because I don't have 2 screens at the moment. But right now, because you've scouted double gas versus his double gas, there is no benefit of you being too aggressive here, because you're both going to have generally the same units out at the same time. And if you leave your SCV there just until 1 minute 50, you're going to see whether he has a factory the same time as you. Is there anything that doesn't quite make sense at the moment, Medic? Versus 1 gas scout with Reaper. Yeah, versus 1 gas, you can be aggressive. And the reason why you can be aggressive with the 1 gas is because you're ahead in the gas count. So you're going to be making another Reaper behind. The person that's making the one that's made the 1 gas, he's not going to have. He may not have another Reaper out, because he's most likely to go into a marine and go for a factory. Yeah. So just by essence of knowing Terran build orders yourself, you know that he's probably going to need a bunker in his natural. Yeah. So this is a game where we've got two gases versus 2 gases. We've gone across the map with the Reaper instead of playing the safer option and scouting around for proxies in our base. Because that's the only thing that can kill an already aggressive opener, a more aggressive opener. And as I said to you before, once you've chosen to play Terran, you've chosen to be a dick. Yeah? 100%. Because Terran are annoying. Yeah? They are designed to be annoying, and that's the way you should play them. That does not mean, however, that you need to be annoying versus someone who's a dick. Oh, that probably made sense in some weird way. So you're going Reaper, Hellion, Reaper, and now this Reaper is scouting around. So there's two scouting patterns, yeah? And this is what makes a good proxy bad and a bad proxy good, yeah? So at the start of the game, if you're not interested in scouting across the map and gaining this information, if you're opening up double gas, your first SCV scout, 18 supply is going to, or 19 supply is going to scout around the third bases here, usually. That's what the first scout will do if you don't want to send the SCV across the map. Your Reapers are then taking that further to the fourth bases because they're slightly quicker. Because by the time your Reaper gets back from the first scout up to the fourth base, your second Reaper will be out. The reason why that's important is so that if your opponent is just moving across the map with two Reapers, you still have both of your Reapers together. Yeah. So what I would personally do on this map, because there's a big dead airspace, is I would definitely be sending my first Reaper, if there's double gas, up to this position here. And then the second Reaper I'd be sending to this position here and here. And then I would be making sure that my Reapers and my Hellions are nice and together in the middle of the map. Because remember, the opponent has to travel all the way across the map to attack into you. Yeah? So they take a risk if they move out with their Reapers and their Hellions versus your Reapers and your Hellions. Which is why a lot of players get away with greed in the higher levels. Because there simply sometimes isn't any scouting. So let's see if Magic Jr. is able to have a look at his Spidey sense here with the double gas. And unfortunately he is playing defensive, which is great. This is what we need. But what we need to be able to do now is there's a choice. And you see from our opponent's position, does he know this is a double gas? He doesn't know this is a double gas, but maybe he's assuming it so. He's going straight into the tech lab. And what Medic is doing is he's doubling down on this. More Reapers and Hellions. This is fine to do if you know that he's not doing anything stupid. Yeah. So you need to be able to scout. This is even more of a reason to be scouting around. You see how your opponent is rushing for this Cyclone here? Very interesting. And he's going for, well, okay, that is very interesting. Does he have a second one? Is that just there, just doing nothing? He just made a supply depot. What a weirdo. Sorry if that was anyone's barcode that's in here, but that is definitely a weirdo play. So right now, is this pre-Cyclone buff patch? Because this was pretty broken back in the day, Medic, a couple of weeks ago. Is this after the Cyclone or before the Cyclone? Where it was doing too much damage. After Cyclone, okay, cool, yeah. Thank you. So right now here, because of the fact that you haven't gone into an earlier Cyclone and you've doubled down versus a double gas opener of Reaper and Hellion instead of rushing for your own Cyclone, now you're in a lot of trouble. Because he will have two Cyclones out, maybe even before you have one. And that's a real big problem. Now if you are this guy here, so this guy seems to have some information here, or he must be gambling, very good at poker. But he's certainly just making Cyclones here. But Cyclones are that cost efficient in the early parts of the game that you can now build a third base and things like that. Like only a couple of Cyclones are needed just to get that information. So you unfortunately got the Reapers and the Hellions here. And let's have a look at whether we go into a tank or into a Cyclone. If you go into a Cyclone, you have a chance of sniping one of his Cyclones. If you don't, you're in big trouble. You see how your opponent has taken a risk here? Go straight into the main base. That is very peculiar. Just run straight into the main base. Yeah, unlucky there, Medic. Unlucky. And let's see what we do at the next stage of the game here. Because there's not really any use here. You've seen two Reapers. If there was going to be more Reapers, you'd have seen it. So you move across the map, and by the time you do, hopefully we'll be able to have something. We are making the Cyclone, and we do have quite a lot of workers here. Let's have a look whether we're able to do any sort of damage. Great scan. We see the Cyclones, and you're in big trouble. You see how rushing to that cyclone is so important. Exactly what I said at the start of the TVT replay. Whoever does rush for it is able just to blind counter, but this guy's taken blind counter to a certainly another level. Tank should be the priority here right after the cyclone instead of the Raven. So let's have a look at whether there was any pause in between that. Not a lot of one, but there still is a little bit of a pause here. Yeah, quite a bit of one now as we're having a look at it. So quite a bit of a pause here, but the tanks definitely need to be out here. But even with that tank, you're in big trouble. This is kind of like, this is a player called Adnap. I think he's a French player. I think he streams. I think this could be Adnap, or certainly somebody that may be watching him. So basically what happens, and this is really crazy, is because of the lack of resources that you need for cyclones, you can go into extra bases. Normally that third base should actually be in his main base. But because he's putting pressure on you, and because you've gone into an aggressive opener, but he's gone into an opener that is better versus your army, there's not really much you can do here apart from bunkering up, chilling out, and doing absolutely nothing. Again, there's other players that do this as well. Ruff does this too, not just Adnap. So you're trying to move out and be aggressive versus aggression. The only thing you can really do here is try and be aggressive with Ravens, but what your opponent has done really well at doing is have vision everywhere on the map with supply depots and reapers. So basically what your opponent's whole objective is to do is to stop any drop or Raven attack or anything like that coming across the map, while he's then going into this killing blow of BCs. Because he's going to force tanks from you. He's going to force things that require you not to make Vikings or things that are anti-cyclone. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. But this is a well thought out build order, whoever this is from. Yeah, very well thought out. And this is definitely a replay I'd post in the replays chat, or certainly this is in the replays chat in Amateur StarCraft League of some really dirty. This is a very dirty opener, but it's very, very effective. So you are going for Vikings here, but unfortunately he does have cyclones that can snipe the Vikings and the Ravens above your army. So at this stage, at this time, you have to go into double starports. There's nothing else you can do here with your limited information. With double bases here, you have to go into a second starport to enable you to be able to at least get to a position where you can kill BCs very quickly. So let's have a look at what we do here. Very interesting. Let's have a look whether this player actually notes any movement that's coming across. So he moves his barracks slightly here. Is he doing anything? He's moving his army a little bit here. Not really much. My God. Did he lose some units here? See how he kills a Viking because they move slightly further ahead. So I'd go into two Stargates. I said it again. 2 starports and a Viking. And make Viking production and really go into mass Vikings, because you've scouted BCs. You have to just assume that he's going into a lot of BCs because you've scouted it. There's not really much you can do. And again, he is just doing what is known as this is purely turtling. So the only way that you kill someone that's purely turtling, so there's a lot of money that's put in between the bases here. To kill this is going to be very difficult. Yeah. So you have to kill everything around it, yeah? And you have to make sure that you have control of the map. That's the only way that you're able to get yourself back in the game. Because he's got loads of resources here. Look how many missile turrets he's got, yeah? He's living the dream. He could certainly be a whole lot better than you at this game, which is why he's doing this, yeah? Certainly could be smurfing, because he definitely has an idea. So we would be trying to scout around and trying to delete all the bases around while taking the whole map to ourselves and going into mass Vikings at least. Because that's the information that we've been given at the moment. We would almost have to go into mech ourselves from that and go into more tanks, because we would need tanks to help support our air units and our air units to help support our tanks. Bio is certainly not an option for at this point from what you've scouted, because of the fact that you have scouted, and I love stimming and winning, so that fills me with a lot of pain. But from what you've scouted, there's no way that you can demonstrate going into bio from this. There's absolutely no way, unless you're planning to kill all these bases and then doom drop in the main. See, all of these resources are here, but look, he's got no missile turrets in his main or his natural. It's insane. I wonder when he gets them. That'd be really cool. BC comes into the base and then doesn't go into the base for whatever reason. Sees the army in the middle of the map here, probably goes into your main now. Comes in, kills some units. You've got some missile turrets there, lovely jubbly. Missile turrets are really a placeholder, but missile turrets are actually pretty good versus BCs. I think they're the best static defense versus BCs, I believe. It's in one of you thermal shorts that you can, it's YouTube shorts that you can have a look at. And again, it has to be mass Viking from you here. You can't go into bio. It's too. Oh, that's a very good matrix there. I'm just looking at this player in terms of what information he got to make his decisions, and he's just lost a BC for crying out loud. That's pretty shocking. So if we'd have went mass Vikings, we would have been able to take control of the map. That would have been the first stage of the game. Once we've taken control of the map, then we're trying to kill the army. So once you've got the air superiority here, he then needs to go to Thors. But if he goes to Thors, you have tanks. So you need a lot of tanks and a lot of Vikings, which you may go into soon, hopefully. If you don't, then you will have to do it at some point. Now, a lot of players are experimenting around nukes. So if there's a stalemate between Terrans, many Terrans don't actually think that nukes are pretty good. I'll tell you what, if you've got a nuke coming down and you're a player that is stuck there and he's not doing anything, yeah, one nuke can be a disaster for a camping player, regardless of whether they're Protoss, the Terran, or their Zerg, yeah. Nukes are actually not a bad idea in the case where you have air superiority, you have a lot of tanks, 1 or 2 nukes go a very long way. It kind of feels kind of troll, but I'm going to try and get an example for everyone and post it into the replay of me playing versus like a top 50 GM Terran that camps with mech, because it's normally the easy go-to strategy, and then you can just slowly nuke your way onto the base. But it's you have to be very patient. And you have to have an idea of whether he's got the air superiority or not. And almost if you go so far as in to do that, do you grab your own Ravens and Vikings and your own upgrades? Potentially. Because you can just out-trade BCs. BCs are rather terrible to make in this matchup because Vikings, they just completely outscale them. The hardest part about this is the fact that he's got missile turrets around his tank, so it's going to be very difficult here, and he's constantly scanning around it, which is pretty insane. And then as soon as you attack into the tanks, it's pretty much it's so hard. Even without great upgrades, the tanks are really good, like 3 or 4 at a time. It's pretty insane how ballsy this Terran was, only because of the opener, the Cyclone opener. This whole game was lost because of the way that we didn't react versus a double gas opener. Our opponent took a risk, and our opponent got away with that risk. It's as simple as that. He also could be slightly better than you in general, to be completely honest. Because he definitely has the next stage of the game mapped out, and then the next stage of the game mapped out. Or he's got information that I'm not sure he should have information at that point. That's really just... Oh, he killed that unit, so yeah. So here's where his vision is gone, but he sees your army going across there. He's scanning to see where your army's going in. And again, all he's doing is backstabbing with BCs. It reminds me of a player called Pokemon, actually, on the NA server. Pokemon does this a lot, but he does it to a less of a 3 factory double starport at this point, 3 turrets for BC. So you could go for, I'd almost go for 3 starports at this point and then 2 factories. So does anyone have any questions on that TVT? Because that was a batshit crazy TVT right there. Now that's not a normal game. A normal game probably would have went a little bit differently. Now, because we went off on a whole tangent about BCs, the reason why BCs aren't great if you're not massing them is because normally after 2 Ravens, you're going into a lot of Vikings. Yeah. So naturally, you're going to hold a lot of BC openings. Normally, medevacs, if you're going for like a biocomposition, happens after like the 6 to 8 Vikings that you make. You then make a couple of medevacs. And then you're using the Vikings and the Ravens to be able to, again, try and get an advantage with your tanks. So you're using the matrices to put on the tanks. If not, if you're a lower elo player and you don't care, the best thing to do is make 4 medevacs, research stim, combat shields +1, and then try and doom drop the main base. And then constantly produce units, constantly try and doom drop. That's the easiest way to coin flip it if you want to do it that way. That's completely fine. A lot of players do that in GM as well. So you said if they're turtling like that, get air control Viking and tanks to break the turrets. Correct. That's the only way, from my mind, you can have a look at that and go, right, without being ahead in terms of your build order, which in Medic's scenario, he was very far behind because he went into more Reapers and Hellions, knowing that his opponent had double gas. So it was always a possibility. Should you get Ravens or just Viking? I mean, you can go for 2 Ravens into Vikings, that's fine. But then you need to take control of the map. So you need to, like, if you're going for bio after, you need to take control of the map. Like, similar to what he did almost. He took control of the map because he just made a couple of Cyclones early. That was it. That's all that he made early. And it was very scary, wasn't it? Because you don't have the tools at that point because you made the extra Reaper and the Hellion. If you'd have made a couple of Cyclones earlier, maybe it would have been a bit of a different story, but still pretty hard because he really invested into those Cyclones. It's a very abusable build order. I remember playing versus Adnap and then going for like a 2 or 3 tank push with Ravens, and it was pretty good. I did go for a 2 base 5 Rex push though, and it was quite disgusting. Because you really have to try and deny that third or do something to it. So in TVT, the general consensus is once you do get your 2 bases saturated, you're going double barracks, double engineering bay. You normally will grab your 3rd CC either before or after your Raven, if you're going Marine Tank Raven into the early mid game. And then what you're trying to do is have Marine spotters out on the map. And all you want to know from the opposite Terran is, are they going for a 3rd base too? So if you've got a 3rd base and the other Terran does not have a 3rd base, you're on the defensive. You just need to know what are you defending against. If you're on 2 bases and he's got a 3rd base and your 3rd base has not even started, guess what, buddy? You're going 2 base all in. So you better get stim, combat shields +1 as fast as you can and look for an opportunity to be aggressive. If either or is not an option and you have no idea, the best way to skill check your opponent is after your Reaper, Hellion, Reaper, you go Marine, Cyclone, Viking into Marine, Tank, Raven. You push across the map with 2 tanks and 2 Ravens, or 3 tanks, 2 Ravens and loads of Marines. And you try to look for damage as you're making extra barracks, as you're making extra engineering base. That is a skill check, yeah? Where you're going across the map with a 2 base push and trying to, you're trying to ruffle the feathers a little bit. So if they have got their 3rd base too soon, you can siege up in between the bases. If they haven't, at least you've got the Ravens to matrix, and at least then you can take a position in his natural and do some damage. If the opponent does not go double gas and you've gone double gas, I always recommend stay on the double gas, go Reaper Hellion, Reaper Hellion, Reaper Hellion, exactly what Medic did. And also with your scouting SEV at 18, I want you to make a proxy starport and punish that Terran for not playing standard TVT. That's what I want you to do. The way Medic played in that game was exactly the way you would play versus a Reaper Expand. Almost carbon copy of it. But what I would suggest is stay on the gas, go for a proxy starport, go for a Liberator. Try and punish them even more. Because the Terran will have to play near perfect in terms of his gas management to be able to get a Cyclone and a Liberator out in time to defend against both of those attacks. A Reaper Expand every TVT, you say it's not viable? It's absolutely viable. You can play against somebody that don't know how to play TVT and you win from a Reaper Expand. The more consistent approach to TVT is double Reaper and a Hellion opener. So from a double gas opener. So the reason why that is because if your opponent is also going double gas as well, you get to hold a lot of very aggressive pushes. So there are things that are viable and things that you can do, Lauren, but there are also things that it's whether you're doing it consistently and you're feeling in control. If you're not feeling in control, if you're feeling controlled by going Reaper Expansion, that's completely up to you. But from a win percentage basis, the players that are going for double gas openers and that are leading towards aggression in TVT are doing a little bit better. mainly because they've got the gas, they've got the ability to do early medevac drops, they've got the ability to do early tank harass, and every build that they scout is kind of holdable if you're going for a double gas. Not the same if you're going for a Reaper expansion. What you'd say you could punish with a proxy starport? Any Reaper expand, I think you'd be able to punish below mid masters. I think it would be very hard for even normal GMs to hold that if they went normal Reaper expand. I really struggle versus it, although some gas first Reaper openings are pretty good versus that, but that's getting really specific. And again, when you're going double gas versus double gas, just go Reaper Hellion, Reaper Hellion, or go 2 Reapers into a Cyclone, similar to what that guy just did to our poor friend Medic there. Jump into his main, absolutely. You can go if he's going Reaper expand and you're going Reaper Hellion Reaper. You've then got the TVZ concept of attacking one base, and then you've got the Liberator doing damage in the other. And you've also got a proxy starport. You can go for a proxy Banshee as well. So now he has to go into a Raven, because now you've got extra aggression to keep him back at home. Honestly, it's a much simpler way of playing the game, and it forces your opponent to make more decisions, and they have to make the right decisions to defend. If the opponent goes Reaper expand, then put a bunker in his natural, what should I do with my Reapers and my Hellions? Well, there's 2 options, because you haven't gone too much into Reapers and Hellions. You can try and dash the 2 Reapers into the main and leave the Hellion outside the natural, or you can leave both the Reapers at each one of the 3rd bases and leave the Hellion outside the natural. And you've got free scouting for the remainder of the game. You then get to do a Marine Cyclone drop. You then get to do a Liberator harassment. You then get to do what you want. And your opponent then has to set the tail of the game. Because everybody knows opening up Reaper Expand isn't ideal. Reaper Expand is like the best opener ever. But in TVT, because we're all dirty in TVT, and there's always, especially the higher you go up, the dirtiness gets even more apparent. You lose the fight with Reaper Hellion against someone who makes at least 1 Cyclone right. If that's the case, why would you ever go Reaper Hellion only against a double gas Terran? Well, Swarmonomics, you've asked the question that I've been asking for a very, very long time here. Well, basically because you do open up a Reaper anyway, to be honest. And if you don't open up a Reaper and you go for a Marine, then if they then move across the map with the first Reaper, your 2 Marines need to be in the perfect position. At least if he goes across the map with 1 Reaper, you get to then punish his 1 Reaper by killing it if he jumps into your main. But if you open up Marine, you don't have that mobility. You lose a fight with the Reaper Hellion against someone who makes at least 1 Cyclone right. If that's the case, why would you ever go Reaper Hellion against a double gas Terran? No, I mean, why would you just never make a... that doesn't make... you may have to reword that one. Why would you just never make a Cyclone? No, you would make a Cyclone, is what I'm saying. If I've missaid it, then yeah. You would always make 1 Cyclone. Yeah. So you'd open up 2 Reapers and a Cyclone, or Reaper Hellion Reaper into a Cyclone. Yeah. To be able to defend against it. So is there any questions on TVT itself? Now TVT is the only exception where we can play defensive instead of aggressive, and that's the trap that a lot of Terrans get caught into, is always being aggressive. In TVT, Lauren is right, you can actually do a Reaper expand. If you get away with it, good for you. But the higher you go up, the likelihood they're going to go double gas, proxy racks. It's good. It's just statistically, there's so many more dirty builds. On a large map, Reaper expand is actually not too bad, because it takes your opponent a long time to get across the map. So an element of what Lauren says is actually very true, which is probably why Lauren has had a lot of success. But with an 18 scout, there's nothing that you can really get caught out with, whether it's going 1 gas or double gas. And remember, most of the things that we've discussed about are all the way up to sort of mid-masters, and you're getting yourself into a comfortable position where you can scout your opponent effectively. Normally in sessions, I normally go through each player's weaknesses. So there may be a weakness that you have personally, like you may micro your units too much, yeah? And you might not actually look into your bases that much to actually make stuff at home. That could be a problem. Your problem could be that you don't hotkey things. So when they go across the map, you kind of lose them. Yeah, there's loads of different things of why people lose, but the idea of the masterclass is to have a look at a general view of the objectives of that one race, and then go, right, this is what we're doing on a consistent basis. What I've said to you guys today is probably the most consistent openings, ideas, concepts that you're going to have within the game that will help you get above 50% win rate. Because to improve in this game, you need to be about 55 to 60% in terms of win rate. You don't need 70 or 80%. That means you're smurfing in that MMR, and you should play enough so that you can get up to the MMR that you've got to. So I'm going to leave the section at the moment. So there's a sort of a 10-minute section for any further questions. It can be a miscellaneous question, can be about another race if you want to, but there's a 10-minute window here for any queries or questions at all. And it could be to do with anything. Richie, what is the weather in the UK? Terrible, as it always is normally my answer. So I'll leave 10 minutes for any queries or questions, and they can be as specific or as vague as possible. If any of you ever need to catch up, obviously pop me a message, a private message. I can always find out what is the problem with a player. What's your favourite fruit? My God, pineapple. What could I say? What could I say that's any different than a pineapple? My God. How to practice? Oh, Kelvin, very specific here. Okay, so Kelvin, I can already look at the minimap. What's in between his natural and his other third base, Kelvin? The question here is, do you need to break it? You don't need to break that position because the map is massive. So go around the other side and run straight into the middle of his bases. Oh, got this next to the... There we go. There's your answer, Kelvin. I can see the mini-map there. Right, do we have any other queries here? I don't like playing double gas in TVT myself because I feel like I'm behind economically when I can't deal any damage to the Reaper Expand or CC First player. If they're going CC First in TVT, Lauren, you're definitely playing against some very interesting players. CC First in TVT is nigh on impossible, depending on how they play. If they're going Reaper Expand and they know you've gone double gas, that also creates an element of animosity and anxiety for the player that's playing Reaper Expand as well. They know that you can make more Reapers and Hellions than them at a specific time, so they'll normally sit there and try to try and make extra defences like the bunker. So just forcing out a bunker is better. Forcing out that bunker early on can actually make them forget about their second supply depot. Believe it or not. But I understand the way that you feel about it. A lot of Terran players do feel that way. I mean, there's mangoes, what? My God, nibbles. So is there any serious...
I like food.
Is there any serious questions? What's an opener to do to Rex proxy... What, to hold a proxy 2Rex Reaper, yeah? Is that what you mean, GG? Or JJ? However you pronounce it. No, you want to proxy? My Lord, JJ. Well... Just grab 2 SCVs at the start of the game, make a supply depot, and move across the map, my friend. Yeah. You're almost making... It depends on what type of proxy Rex. That's very specific. That's very specific. I'll try and find a really nice one. I might even go... A spawning tool is a great tool for you to use, but for specific build orders, I don't really... promote proxy 2Rex because it doesn't help you learn the game. However, I don't mind if you guys do it if you want the MMR. It's fine. Well, when do I make the gases, I guess, is my real question. The standard way is you're making your supply depot at the original time. Yeah, so you're making your supply depot, and then your worker, one of your first workers goes across the map, and then the next worker that comes at your CC goes out and across the map. Then you're making 2 barracks and then 2 gases. That's what usually a lot of players do. Yeah. You won't need anything else, JJ. Yeah. But you stop making SCV production after you've got the first supply depot. Yeah. So you go two barracks at your opponent's third base, and then two gases. That's probably the easiest way to explain it to you. Yeah. Yep, it is very fun being annoying. And I told you, once you're a dick as Terran, you will enjoy the game much more. Generally speaking, in all matchups, when is scanning actually worth it? A very good question, actually, there from Swarmanomics. When you're even bases with a Zerg or a Protoss, it is worth it to scan directly in the eyeball of the main exactly what's going on. If you have no information whatsoever, other than that, they are just mules. And if pineapple, you are asking me what my favourite vegetable is, that is not going to be answered. We've already gone to the fruit part. When I blink in with 3 or 4 gate blinking PVT, what should I try to prioritise to get the most damage? Very good question again. So, it depends, Mr. Nibbles. So, there's a lot of openings now that are around. Is this a Twilight with a Robo or without a Robo, first of all? The one without a Robo hits much quicker.
I go Twilight into Robo.
Okay, coolio. So we do have the vision from the Warp Prism or the Observer?
Yeah. Warp Prism.
Okay.
When I do 3 gate, 4 gate, I'll bring the Observer along.
Okay, so I would strongly advise you doing the 4 gate because you've got more stalkers. Second of all, with your Observer, you need to know where the siege tanks are positioned and then blink your stalkers wherever they are not. So when you're into his base, what you want to try and do is not focus workers and units, is when he tries to challenge you, when he unsieges his tank, you can kill that bad boy. They're most likely only going to have 1 to 2 tanks at that point, and maybe quite a lot of Marines. They have to unsiege that tank on some of these main bases to get into a good position. So when he unsieges, and you'll see that with the Observer, you can blink on top of it, kill it. If he's got no tanks defending his Marines, they are dead. It's as simple as that. If there are tanks and you've blinked in, well, unlucky for you. But if there is a tech lab nearby, try and snipe it and then get the hell out.
So tech lab, if there's 2 and I see 1 working, I'm going to go for the working one.
Yeah. Well,
and then
just killing
Observer to
any
spot
add-on.
tanks.
If you're tanking damage while you've blinked in, you just need to move your stalkers in a position where they can get back out again. So first of all, you need to know if you can blink into his base and do damage. If you can't, then you have to stay outside. And then you're going for a third base, going for charge, going for upgrade, things like that, yeah? Because then you're trying to hold them. You're doing your own little siege position. So the objective of the Terran is to make sure that his siege tanks are spread throughout the majority of the main and the natural, yeah? So that they can cover each way. They can only do that with 3 tanks on most maps. So with 2 tanks, there's always a position that you can be annoying with. And it's normally to the far side of their main base where their mineral line is, usually where they don't have tanks. And they have to move their tanks forward to you. And when he unsieges that 1 tank, he's in big trouble. Right, if you're on even base...
Do you recommend blinking onto that tank? Sorry, last question.
If he unsieges and you have a general idea of how much he's got, then yes. Kill that tank, and then you can just retreat to that position, make more stalkers, and then you're trading stalkers versus Marines. The best place you want to be, right?
Right.
And then he's tilted, he leaves the game, Protoss OP, probably a racial slur.
I like getting racial slurs.
Good stuff. If you're on even bases in TVT, isn't scanning putting you behind because they have mules? That's a very Zerg question you would ask this one, Noix. That's like saying if you missed an inject. are you ahead that much in TVT? It is such a Zerg question, Swarmanoix. I'll explain it at a later date. So, TVT is slightly different because you're still... If you have no idea whether it's mech or bio, that's the only time that you would scan. Remember, TVT is the exception to the rule with Terran aggression. Terran are normally aggressive to Protoss and Zerg. In TVT, you can have a consistent approach to playing defensive. There we go. Well done, Drakness. How to beat bio with tank Viking? Should I play turtle or be active? I often get caught unsiege while moving out. Don't have enough scan for vision. Very good question, Pineapple. So if you're opening up bio tank Viking, tank Viking, a really good unit to have as the meat of your army is Hellbats or Hellions. That way, if you are caught out, at least you've got a lot of HP in front of your tanks and your Vikings. There we go. Yes, Hellions and loads of cheap mineral units like Zerglings, Marines, they normally die so that the bigger units, the tanks, the Thors, the Roaches, the Ravagers, the Hydras can do the damage. That's the purpose of being such a cheap mineral unit. Well, I say 100 minerals are cheap, but that's not particularly. So you just need like a little bit of a small contingency of Hellbats in front of your army. And then if you do get caught out, you can just siege up. You only lose Hellbats and in the first couple of units. No problem at all. Building a gun rate. Very funny. Which you're trying to insinuate that +3 adrenal links on the mega shield for damage. Well, they're not technically tier 1 anymore, are they? Let's be honest, with a hive mind behind it. But yes, I do get what you mean. No, they can be very, very good Zerglings when they have adrenal glands. But do you have any other questions? Because I am going to round this off. Any other serious questions that we've got? Let me have a look in the other channel. Cool, thanks. It's fun when I'm playing with it. I missed the Zerg part. How do you know when to go across the map with early Hellion? So, TVZ, you're basically, for the intermediate players, you're going across the map with the 2 Hellions and the Reaper. If you're not an intermediate player, like mid-masters, probably top diamond, I would suggest leaving 6 Hellions at home and going for a Liberator. You'll send a Liberator to the main and your 6 Hellions to the 3rd base of your opponent. By that time, you should already have a supply depot wall and perhaps a CC in your wall as well, so that you can easily move across the map without being punished. JJ. Yes, good luck and fun in your 4 game nibbles. Be aggressive. Correct. Love it. So, that rounds off the Terran Masterclass. I will be trying to organise with Glacius another date to do a Zerg Masterclass on exactly the concepts that we're playing as Zerg, what is the most consistent ways of playing as Zerg, whether I like to play it or not. So there are things that you like to play as a player that you may not agree with. That's perfectly fine because that demonstrates you as a player. But these are the most consistent ways for you to improve at the game. You can then branch off your own little sub builds or anything like that. But thank you all for listening to the Terran Masterclass. I don't think I was over too much in time. But yeah, again, I hope everybody enjoyed it. They got something out of it all the way up to about mid-masters. And again, we'll be back with a Zerg Masterclass in hopefully 3 to 4 weeks' time in January. Good luck and fun to all of you on the ladder. And as always, if you're playing Bio, Stim and Win. And as always, if you're playing Mech and Wreck. Good luck and fun. Have a lovely weekend. And see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gamer Richie. I really appreciate it.
Our craft keys on top. Gamer Richie never gonna stop. At GM level, he reigns supreme. Stim and Win, it's like a dream.